These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are Omaha Steaks, gourmet you can trust. More information at omahasteaks.com, code TOM. CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. The Clean Phone Pro, phone sanitizer and charger. More info at thenewdealshop.com. Plexiderm Wrinkle Reducer, real science, real results. More info at plexiderm.com, code TOM. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom. And TEEF, TEEF, Smarter Pet Dental Health. For more information, teef.com, code TOM.
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Health Justice Now, Single Payer and What Comes Next by Timothy Faust. And this is from the introduction. A secret scream rings through America. It rings down the sterile fluorescent hallways of our hospitals. It rings over our rural towns and our native reservations. It rings through our prisons, the bellies of our great cities. It rings in our farms and our fields, our streets and our sewers, our bodies and our blood. And we are cursed to never hear it clearly until, at last, we realize it has been our own mouth screaming and we are lost. A child born today inherits, in that secret, a new American squalor, the skeletal remains of the American cities, the bleached bones of the American suburbs. This secret is a birthright of continual exploitation, pumped for labor and drained of cash and then punished for the resulting suffering. Punished for being hungry, punished for being sick, punished for being pregnant, punished for being poor, punished for being black or brown, punished for being queer, for being unlucky, for being. At the base of that suffering is lodged a little truth, like a knot in the stomach. In America, sickness makes you poor, and poorness makes you sick. This is a book about that relationship and why it happens, and why it's unnecessary, and what we can do to fix it. The cosmic whirling of God's great slot machine has not determined that some people are fated to suffer while others flourish. We have the resources to take care of everyone, and yet we refuse to do so. Your medical debt and medical bills are unnecessary, but we have chosen to make them necessary. These are structural problems with structural causes, and many of them share roots in how we pay for health care. This is a book about healthcare and health finance. They are different. Healthcare is anything that helps you stay safe and healthy. It's a kind of freedom from and within your own body. Health finance is the method by which we as a country pay for that freedom and by which we decide who gets to have it and who doesn't. Healthcare is more than what happens to you in the hospital. Healthcare is whether your home makes you sick, or your food makes you sick, or your environment makes you sick, or whether you have enough money to afford the things that keep you healthy. In America, the structure of corporate healthcare has convinced us that some people deserve healthcare and some people don't. This is a book about that corporate health finance, about private insurance and private insurers. For half a century, they've convinced us that they're the only things that keep us or could ever keep us from the utter financial ruination of illness. They've sold us different inadequate insurance plans and persuaded us that this is a form of great liberty while chipping away at our freedoms for profit and holding our bodies and our children's bodies hostage. This is a book about single-payer healthcare, a health finance model in which we pool our abundant collective resources to provide health care to all people. It is a common model across the world. As we will discuss in this book, we have the potential not just to enact a single-payer program in America, but to build the greatest health care program among any so-called developed democracy. Here is my profession of faith. I believe beyond any doubt that single-payer is demonstrably sound and imminently feasible. I believe a properly ambitious and well-structured single-payer program will do more than any other American social program of this generation to soothe the burns, to resuscitate the spirit, to nourish the moral will of the American people. I believe it will loosen the loathsome manacles of American health finance, an exploitative institution that profits by plundering from us our own bodily autonomy, and that anchors a larger exploitation that holds those whom we love as captive leverage to guarantee our servitude to abusive employers or domestic partners, to those who seek to dominate us both in the office and in the hospital. I believe this nation owes its people, whose labor has created its rich banquet, the safety and agency of healthcare. I believe this healthcare is greater in scope than that which happens upon an operating table. I believe that housing, food, income, and more, the components of basic human dignity, are health care. And I believe our work is that of striving toward justice for all people. And I therefore believe, I have to believe, that single-payer health care is our moral imperative. Single-payer is our tool. Single-payer is our weapon. Single-payer is our first step. But single-payer on its own is not the goal. This book is about health justice. Healthcare is personal, so I want to start this book personally by introducing two friends of mine, Steve Way and Kyle Kolick. They're two guys about my age, I'm 30, who live in North New Jersey. They're sweet, gentle people and probably the most charismatic pair of friends I've met in my entire life. They make me laugh until my face hurts, and we like watching pro wrestling together. They're also being utterly broken by our American healthcare system, and it's keeping them from living their lives. Steve has muscular dystrophy. The muscle and tissues that hold his body together are eating themselves. He's doing pretty good, all things considered. He beat his original life expectancy of 18 and now probably has a long life ahead of him. Steve needs a wheelchair to move and a ventilator to help him breathe. The book, Health Justice Now, Timothy Faust.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, smoky days are here again. Oh, greetings from Portland, Oregon, where, we can barely see maybe 300 yards. It's astonishing. The air quality, according to the air quality index, this is from the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA's air quality index, says that healthy air has 0 to 50. I believe it's particles per cubic foot of air, particles that are less than 2.5 microns in size. These are microscopic. They're so small that when they get into your lungs, they don't just hang out there like cigarette smoke does. They go right into your bloodstream, and they get transported around your body, and they can get into your brain and your organs and your eyes, and they cause really serious damage. They cause heart attacks. This is beyond just asthma. They cause cardiac arrhythmias. They can cause all kinds of problems. And so anyhow, when it's 0 to 50, that's healthy. Anything above 300, in the mid-hundreds, anything from 100 to 300 is considered dangerous, and above 300 is considered hazardous, and if it lasts for more than 24 hours, it's considered emergency conditions. Well, our air in Oregon for the last 3 days has been over 500 here in Portland, 500 particles per cubic foot, which is just mind-boggling. There's a wine grower down in Washington County who's planted his vineyard. He and his wife, they planted their vineyards in 1976, and they have literally every single year written down when the grapes leaf every spring, when the buds come out every spring, when they blossom every spring, and when the fruit ripens every summer and fall. They write down that date, and they've been fairly steady. And what they found is that all of those events are now occurring between 7 and 14 days earlier than they were in the 70s. In just 40 years, we have seen global warming completely alter the climate of the Pacific Northwest. And the result is that the trees are dying out. First of all, they're drying out. The soil is drying out. The trees are dying. And, we've got this insane, it's a tinderbox. The West Coast is never going to be the same. And by the way, this is coming to a town near you. Either as a result of this is global warming. Trump is going to California today. That's going to be entertaining because he says, oh, yeah, it's a hoax made up by the Chinese. Right. And he has rolled back all these fossil fuel restrictions, to make things worse. He's absolutely, for 4 years, has been making things worse, as did George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. But that is just like the beginning of the news for the day. By the way, in the second hour of our program, Barbara Smith is going to be with us, Nobel Prize nominee. She wrote a great piece for The Nation called How to Dismantle White Supremacy. We're going to have a conversation about that. And in our third hour, I want to do a deep dive into QAnon and Nazi ideology, blood libel, and the protocols of the Elders of Zion and all that kind of stuff. We'll get into that in the third hour today. But for our first hour, I wanted to talk about Bob Woodward and Donald Trump. Bob Woodward was interviewed last night on 60 Minutes. I don't know if you saw it, but the clips have been widely circulated. Pretty much everything he said has already been said in the press in the last week or so. And he was interviewing Donald Trump back in January and February. His interviews ran right up until a few months ago, until August. But basically, the stuff that is so shocking is that in January and February, Donald Trump knew that this, and told Bob Woodward, that the coronavirus was not only deadly, far deadlier than the flu, but that it was airborne. And so it was highly transmissible. It's more than just a touch. You can't just wash your hands. It's airborne, and you can't stop breathing. The average person takes 17,000 breaths a day. You can't stop it. If you do, you die. And so, Woodward knew this back in January and February, and I know it's very fashionable right now to trash Bob Woodward for sitting on that information. My personal take on it, frankly, is that if he had revealed it at the time in the Washington Post, it would have been a one-day story. Because back then, nobody was sure of anything. By nobody, in the general public, right, and in the news media. The scientists were pretty solid on this by the end of January, but it certainly wasn't making its way into the American media. Now, Taiwan and South Korea and several other countries, Australia, New Zealand, they had figured this out and they had locked down for it because they'd been through SARS back in 2003. And we'll get to that in just a second, but excuse me. But, Bob Woodward is being trashed for not releasing the information. As I said, I think that, that's a reasonable discussion that we can have. But I think that there's a much, much bigger picture here that nobody's talking about. And that I think that we all need to talk about, which is if Donald Trump knew how deadly COVID was back in January, Bob Woodward couldn't have been the only person that he told. I mean, he had to have brought this up in cabinet meetings. The guy is, voluble and loquacious. He's talking constantly. He knew this. I mean, and by the way, the people who told him probably told, at the very least, the national security staff and the White House staff. I mean, how could they not? So I think really the question we should be asking is, why did our government officials who are paid to keep America safe also not do anything to protect us? Why did they lie about it? Whether it's the appointed government officials like, Jared and Ivanka, or whether it's the elected government or the appointed government officials in the cabinet or elected government officials like Mike Pence. In fact, Kelly Loeffler and Richard Burr, these Republican senators, dumped their stock after they got briefed about this. Remember that? Well, a professor and physician over at George Washington University, says that given this information, Donald Trump, at the very least, is guilty of negligent homicide. He didn't just ignore the virus, he actively lied to the American people about it and continues to lie to this day. I mean, holding giant rallies like he did over the weekend in Nevada. That's going to lead to increased infection spreads and more deaths. There will be other Herman Cains. More Darwin Awards are going to be passed out to Trump followers, to Trump humpers in the next few months because of what Donald Trump is doing right now. Now, most of them will probably die after the election. That's 50 days from now. But other countries that took testing and contact tracing seriously are now returning to something that resembles normalcy. I mean, this is pretty mind-boggling, right? Taiwan's last 5 months and counting continue to be defined by a single number. This is from the diplomat Nick Aspinwall. 0. The number of local transmissions recorded in Taiwan since April 12th. 0. Right? No deaths. I mean, it's you put this into perspective and it gets pretty damn breathtaking. Canada reported 0 COVID deaths in the last 24 hours. This was a day or two ago. And maybe they've had a death in the last day or so. But, I mean, the rest of the world has this under control. We have more dead people in the United States now than died in all of America's wars since 1945. So how should America respond to leadership whose knowing, intentional lies and actions killed more Americans than the enemy in North Korea, North Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan combined over a 70-year period? Do we have a commission? Do we ship them off to The Hague? What do you think?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
How should America respond when its president and the people around him intentionally commit negligent homicide? And welcome back. Let's see here. Dennis in Aptos, California. Hey, Dennis, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, and I want to thank you for using global warming and not climate change in your introduction today.
No, I use both terms, but I think it's important to use both terms. I prefer global warming, frankly, because I think it's more descriptive. But anyhow.
So do I. Yeah, so do I. We have to remember Frank Luntz came up with climate change. I think Trump should be held responsible for
actually, Dennis, for the record, there were a bunch of scientists suggesting that we should be using the phrase climate change because there will be local areas of cooling instead of warming and local areas of rainfall and whatnot. Frank Luntz tested that and found that it was less. It had less impact, and therefore promoted it in the Republican Party. but it wasn't, he wasn't the evil genius behind it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, back to the Trump. I mean, I really do think once he's out of office that this could be one of the other charges against him, willful negligence, or indeed perhaps willful homicide of hundreds of thousands of Americans. And you asked about what can we do about it. I don't think we go to the point of the Romanians with Ceausescu or the Italians with Mussolini, but I bet there's a lot of people right now who wouldn't mind that happening to Trump. I've read things on.
I don't even
YouTube
want to go there,
replies.
Dennis. I mean, those leaders, those leaders were gruesomely killed, and nobody is suggesting that Donald Trump or anybody around him should be. And in fact, I gotta end the conversation right now, because anytime anybody starts talking like that, it's just it's beyond the pale. But that said, there were a lot of Nazi leaders who were brought up on charges in The Hague, and a number of Rudolf Hess died in prison, in the Spandau prison, for the death of millions of people. And I think that there's going to be a reckoning here. I think that there's going to be a reckoning for Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil, although his popularity is going up right now because he's playing socialist. He's literally passing out large quantities of government money to poor people, which is something that, generally speaking, I would advocate. But he's doing it rather cynically. I mean, he's not doing it out of any sense of this is how a government should run or anything like that. But you've got Bolsonaro there. You've got, Modi in India, it's kind of a mixed bag. We'll see. There are a couple of countries in the world, they tend to be run by basically autocratic strongman type governments that are largely ignoring this or adopting a herd mentality or a herd immunity strategy. England, the United Kingdom, is going into a second lockdown now, and you can track this right back to Woodcock, the health minister, and Johnson, the prime minister, saying, well, we're just going to do a herd mentality thing. Look at Sweden. Well, Sweden didn't just say, hey, everybody have fun. They actually pulled the country together on a voluntary basis. So anyhow, what should we do? We'll be back with that and more of the news of the day in just a moment. Stick around. It's 20 minutes past the hour, or we'll be shortly. Hi, Thom Hartmann here. In my new book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, I'll be taking you from the birth of America as a revolt against monopoly, remember the Boston Tea Party, to the largely successful efforts of both Presidents Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt and other like-minded leaders to constrain corporations' monopolistic urges, to the massive changes in the rules of business starting during the Reagan Revolution that have brought us into the cancer stage of capitalism. In the foreword by Ralph Nader, he says, "This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation." End quote. It's the fourth in my Hidden History series, available where all fine books are sold. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy starts with you. Tag, you're it. Or billion. And so, gridlock. Anyhow, it's over at ThomHartmann.com. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Just to put this stuff in perspective, right? We're closing in on 200,000 American dead this week. 200,000. Now, the total number of Americans killed by Japan in World War II was 160,000. So Trump so far has killed more Americans, or Trump's inaction so far has killed more Americans than Japan did in World War II. The Nazis, the Germans in World War II in Europe, killed 116,000 Americans. So, by the way, ehistory.osu.edu is a great source for all these statistics. 116,000 Americans killed by Nazis in World War II. We're closing in on 200,000. While 600,000 people died in the Civil War, most of them didn't actually die in the battlefield. There were epidemics of disease and all kinds of, actual famine in some places. But the number of Confederate soldiers killed in battle during the Civil War was 94,000. The Union soldiers killed in battle was 110,000. So more than the number of soldiers who died in the Civil War have died as a result of Trump and the people around him's inaction. In the Korean War, we lost 58,000 Americans. In the Vietnam War. In the Korean War, it was 33,000. In the Mexican-American War, it was 13,000. In the American Revolution, we lost 4,400 Americans. 9/11, we lost 2,996 people. The Spanish-American War, we lost 2,200 people. And if you want to get into the stuff that Republicans are really hysterical about, when they proposed impeaching President Obama because 2 Americans had died of Ebola, remember that? This was like, for a month or so, they had this campaign going, impeach Obama, 2 Americans have died from Ebola. And then after that, it was throw out Secretary Clinton because 4 Americans died of Benghazi. And then don't forget the Bowling Green massacre and the massive caravans that were coming to attack America. All the Americans that died there, 0. But if we look at Trump's crimes compared to other leaders, and again, this is not incompetence. We thought, there were a lot of us talking about Trump's an idiot, Trump's incompetent. No, in January and February, Donald Trump knew that this virus was airborne and that it would kill people. He knew it. He said, it's really nasty, Bob, but I'm going to play it down because I don't want to create a panic. What's the panic he didn't want to create? In the stock market. That's what it was called in 1929. It was called the stock panic. It just astonished me. One of the things, as I was watching Bob Woodward last night, he relates the story of Trump telling him, in fact, they played the audio of Trump telling him he didn't want to create a panic. And then Woodward completely misunderstands what Trump was saying. Trump doesn't care if the American people panic. He constantly is trying to make the American people panic. Oh my God, the Mexicans, they're rapists, they're killers, they're coming. I mean, he opened his campaign in 2015 trying to panic people. And then there was the caravan that was coming. In fact, there were 2 caravans that were coming. In both cases, Trump and Fox News hyping them. Oh my God, be afraid, look out. He's done everything he can to panic Americans. Antifa is coming to rob and rape you. Black Lives Matter is going to destroy your neighborhoods. He doesn't give a rat's ass about panicking Americans. And I was just astonished. Woodward spent like 3 or 4 minutes trying to understand exactly why Donald Trump would be concerned about panicking people. He wasn't worried about panicking people. He said, I don't want to create a panic. What's a panic? That's how for 200 years in the United States we have referred to stock market crashes. This was all about letting Kelly Loeffler and Richard Burr and any other Republican that wanted to do it to sell their damn stock and get out of the market before it dropped. But compare Donald Trump to other people. We have 20,000 infections per million Americans. We have 597, roughly 600 deaths per million Americans. So you can compare apples to apples. Different countries are different sizes, but if you compare the number of people infected and the number of people dead per million people, you've got an apples to apples comparison. We are 20,000 infected per million people. Canada, 3,600 infected per million people. Germany, 3,100 infected per million people. Norway, 2,200 infected per million people. Australia, 1,000 infected per million people. South Korea, 439. We're at 20,000. South Korea is at 439. Deaths per million people,
We are at 600 deaths per million people. Canada's at 243. South Korea is at 7. We are at 597 dead people for every million Americans. South Korea is at 7 dead people. In New Zealand, it's 5 dead people for every million people. And Trump is saying, I think we're doing a great job. He was saying it last night in Nevada at his super spreader event. And by the way, they will be passing out the Darwin Awards for that to the next Herman Cain pretty soon.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Do we need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission afterwards where they all get to come out and apologize to us? What do you think? Well, it's Monday. It's a great start to a new week as we are moving, kind of headlong into the election season here. And America is in deep and substantial and real need of a good progressive television network. And we just happen to have one right here. Have you been telling your friends about Free Speech TV? It's pretty important stuff, letting folks know where they can find good progressive programming, because there is good progressive programming, and it's right here. It's right here. But it doesn't continue without your help. And, I know that that's, it's the way it is. It's produced as a result. I mean, this is some really brilliant and farsighted thinking back 19, 20 years ago when Free Speech TV was first started, was the idea that there would be journalism that was free of bias, journalism and reporting and opinion that was free of, any corporation or any billionaire saying, here, say this as I pass out some money your way. We've got this $10,000 match from Andrew in San Diego. If we hit our goal at the end of the fund drive, that's a pretty big deal. Mike in San Francisco has covered all our hard costs. So we've got a couple of really good people here helping us out. And now we need you to make this happen. 877-378-8669. You can call now and or anytime during the program. 877-378-8669 with a $20 gift to Free Speech TV. You have your choice of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the sticker that says Fight for Democracy, or a set of 3 stainless steel straws. What a cool thing, It's like, I love it. That's with a $20 gift. With a $50 gift, you can have your choice of one of the 3, the Free Speech TV webcam cover, the tote bag that says change never happens from the top down, and the postcard pack, Fight for Democracy. With a $75 gift, there's the official Thom Hartmann Program mug or your choice of the Free Speech TV hat, which comes in, what was it Henry Ford used to say? We offer, any color anybody wants as long as it's black. And it was the Model T, and that's the case with this hat. So that's a $75 gift. With a $100 gift, there is a pair of face masks, one for you and one for anybody you'd like to share it with. And it says, what we can grow from crisis. It's, a thought-provoking face mask. A nice idea. And face masks, of course, are increasingly an important part of our lives, just something that, we don't get by without. With a $120 gift, there is the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt. That's, or your choice of one of 3 books. You can either have the t-shirt or a book. And among the books, there are 3 choices. There is The Hidden History of the War on Voting, which is the book that came out about 6 months ago from me. I wrote the book. And it's about the Republican war on voting. I mean, it goes back to the founding of the Republic, but most of the book is about the modern-day Republican war on voting. There is my newest book. It just came out. It literally was just released last week, or the week before last, titled The Hidden History of Monopoly, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream. And it's a pretty timely book. Ralph Nader wrote the foreword to it. And in that foreword, he said words to the effect of, this is one of the best books that's been written on this topic in a while. In fact, here's exactly what he said. This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation. I have read many books on monopolistic practices and have written a few on the subject. None have the potential to reach the moral imagination, and indignation of the American people where they live, work, and raise their families like Hartmann's engrossing volume. None for sure had the potential to reach so many members of Congress who are finally awakening to the long overdue accounting of monopoly's many costs. So Ralph Nader wrote just a wonderful foreword. So your choice of any one of those books. That's with a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, there is your choice. There's 2 Zoom meet and greets that we're going to have, one in October and one in November. The one in October will be on the 14th, and the one in November will be on the 18th. And we'll just all get together on a Zoom call for an hour and talk about whatever's on your mind. You can ask me anything you want, and I'll try to give you as honest and as it is answer. These are not recorded. This is kind of off the record conversation, and I find them fascinating. I've met some really great people, and I think you'll find it interesting too. That's with a $240 gift. With a $360 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University Fall Box, which includes the I'm a Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the Democracy sticker, the Free Speech TV tote bag, the Democracy postcards, and the book on monopolies that I just read that piece from the foreword by Ralph Nader to you about. And that's with a $360 gift. With a $1,000 gift once this thing settles down, once this pandemic is over. But the larger picture here is that Free Speech TV is here for you. On the Science Revolution this week, Dr. Michael Mann is here on climate change and the West on fire. Plus, there's a new study showing planet Earth may temporarily pass a dangerous 1.5 degrees Celsius warming limit by the middle of the next decade. This is a huge warning to us all. Former EPA official Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali drops by to warn us about creating an apocalyptic, devastated planet. Attorney for Earth Justice Bradley Marshall is here informing us about bomb trains. Earth Justice has just filed a legal challenge to stop them. And in Geeky Science, I'm looking at why the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine study was put on hold. Tune into the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are available. And welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. James in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It says you disagree with me, James. So you go to the front of the line. What's up?
Okay. Yeah, I want to disagree with you in regards to saying that had somebody else been president or whoever, less people would have died or whatever. Trump did the best he could with the situation at hand. Nobody, including Trump, knew it was going to be as bad as what it said it was. And his decision not to create a panic over that was correct. You say it was for the stock market. I disagree with that. You're just basing your opinion. I disagree with it. And also, I want to thank you for doing more to help Trump than hurt him, because you're making the same mistake you did in 2016. The more people like yourself trash Trump, the more it helps him, because people are sick and tired of hearing the same man being accused of everything under the sun. You do nothing but trash him. All you're doing is making people pull for Trump because we're sick and tired of hearing. Thanks a lot, Tom.
Okay, James. Here, James, you still there?
I'm here.
Okay. We got our first case on January 20th. Taiwan got their first case on January 21st. Taiwan has 35 million people. Taiwan immediately, because they had the exact same information that Trump shared with Bob Woodward 1 week after January 20th, Taiwan immediately said they didn't even shut down their country. Taiwan never shut down their country. Instead, they said, okay, what we know about this, which is what Trump told Bob Woodward, is that this is an airborne virus. And so we're going to have everybody in the country wear a mask. That's it. That's what we're going to do.
Okay.
And we're going to start testing people. And hang on just a second, James. Let me just finish my sentence, and then I'll give you all the time you want.
Okay.
And Taiwan said, we're going to start testing people, and anybody who tests positive, we will pay for a hotel to put them up in, but they are going to be quarantined until they no longer are testing positive. And anybody that they've come into contact with, we will trace. Taiwan did that. Taiwan has had fewer than 24 people die. They haven't had a case of transmission since April 12th. They are having football games now, soccer games with thousands of people in the stands. The malls are open, the stores are open, the restaurants are open. Everyone's still wearing masks, but they don't have this virus on their island. They have not had a domestically transmitted case since April 12th. They knew the exact same stuff Trump knew, and if Trump had done what Taiwan did, probably fewer than 300 or 400 people in America would have died. Over 190,000 Americans are dead because Donald Trump lied to us for 6 months about what he knew, James. And those are the facts. I don't see how you can rebut that.
There's another fact, Tom, that you seem to be forgetting, and I recall this, and probably most of your callers, you couldn't get masks then because there was a shortage of them. You couldn't even get toilet paper. So where did all these mysterious masks supposed to come from? It took us months to build up to that. How's that Trump's fault? You didn't talk about that.
Well, during World War II,
I'm listening.
Hang on just a second. Within a month of Franklin Roosevelt having declared war on Germany and Japan, in December of 1941, we were producing a bomber an hour out of the River Rouge Ford plant in Detroit. Franklin Roosevelt invoked the Defense Production Act and said to Ford, you're not making cars anymore, you're going to make bombers. And they were producing a B-29 bomber an hour within a month of our entering World War II. I don't know why Donald, obviously Taiwan did something similar to that. We're going to start producing masks, but Donald Trump chose not to do that and instead chose to lie to us, James.
He didn't lie to us, Tom. That's your opinion.
He told us it was going to go away. He knew that was a lie. He told us it was about as dangerous as the flu. He knew that was a lie. He told Bob Woodward that was a lie in January and February. Haven't you heard the audio of this, James? Woodward recorded the calls with Trump's permission.
Is the president of the United States the only person that knew that? Or did all these other people that supposedly blame Trump, they didn't know anything until it got out of control? Only the president.
James, you're making my point. Obviously, Trump was not the only person who knew this. Mike Pence knew this. The head of Health and Human Services knew this. Hell, back in the last week of November, the U.S. intelligence agencies notified Israel, and this was published in the Israeli press, and it's been verified all over the world. In November, we notified our intelligence services who had told this to Trump. Trump was briefed on this in November, that there was some sort of wild, contagious virus that wasn't the flu that was loose in China. By December, they knew what it was. They knew that it was what we call, now COVID-19. So, it's not, yes, there was a whole bunch of people around Trump, his cabinet, his national security officials, his vice president. They all knew how bad it was. But Trump made it clear that he was going to lie about this, and anybody who disagreed with him, he fired. James?
I'm here.
Okay. So what do you do with a president who lies to you and causes 200,000 deaths? What do you do?
He lied to us. They didn't know the severity, and still the severity of it's been way out. Has been blown way out of proportion. You didn't give all the facts correctly. You said 190-something thousand had died. Only a small percentage of them actually died from COVID alone. The bulk of them had underlying conditions, people over 80, and also how many people die from the flu every year that has other underlying conditions? Probably just as many or more. So you're not giving
the number of people who died from the flu. James, the number of people who died from the flu last year was under 4,000. And yes, there are death certificates.
All right, if that's the case,
hang on just a second, James. Just chill out for a second. There are death certificates. You're right. There are death certificates that say that this person died from heart failure caused by COVID. This person died from respiratory failure caused by COVID. There are a lot of people who had diabetes and other conditions and then died from COVID. So what? They died from COVID, James.
Well,
they wouldn't be dead if they didn't have COVID.
had they got the flu, they could have died from the same thing. How many people die from the flu every year? You don't know that. You're
around 3,000. Around 3,000 people die from the flu every year. Actual cases.
Well, how many of those actually died that know from the flu versus somebody that could have underlying conditions, as you said, a heart condition, and they actually died from the flu, but then they said it was a heart condition because it's much information.
No. COVID causes heart failure. You don't have to have heart disease to have your heart fail from COVID. What you're missing, James, you've been listening too much to Fox News. I'm telling you, if you get COVID without heart disease, it can cause a heart attack. And your death certificate will then say heart stopped because of COVID. That's two things. And that little bit of truth is being used to lie to people like you, James, and tell you that because COVID stopped this person's heart, that therefore they didn't die of COVID. I don't understand how that makes any sense to anybody.
All right. Let me ask you another question. I know 5 people, I would not say their names for any reason, that was diagnosed with COVID-19, tested positive. Okay, they went back to the doctor the very next day for the next week, 3 different tests, and they tested negative. Okay, the one positive, they showed that as a COVID-19. The other 3 said they didn't have it, so those numbers are skewed. And also, how many people actually get sick at all from COVID-19? Very few.
About half.
It's a very small amount.
About half of the people who are infected with COVID-19 have symptoms.
That's not true. That's not true. That's not true.
Well,
clusters.
James, look at the science. About half of people who get COVID have symptoms, and about half don't have any symptoms. And most of the people who don't have any symptoms are younger people. But we now know, from the school studies that we're looking at in Europe, that kids who are, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old are perfectly capable of spreading it when they get it. They just don't typically get symptoms. There are some who get symptoms. There have been some who died, but mostly not.
These same doctors, these doctors that knew all this information.
James, I don't hear. James, stop for a second. James, why are you justifying 200,000 people dying from a disease we didn't have to get? South Korea doesn't have this disease. Taiwan doesn't have this disease. Australia, by and large, doesn't have this disease. They had a recent small outbreak in one state, in Victoria. You've got countries in Europe that have this disease largely under control. Why are you justifying all these American deaths? I don't understand. Is it because you think that Donald Trump is wonderful, and therefore, if he lied to us, we can't acknowledge that?
How do you know that those other governments aren't lying to you about the numbers?
Because there's people who live there. There are reporters. There are scientists.
Okay.
They're part.
I got you.
You've got the World Health Organization. I mean, come on, James.
I hear you.
All righty, James. Thanks for the call.
Tom. Yeah, man. Thanks.
What's the same old story? Okay. All righty. Well, James is gone. All right. We'll be back. James, I wish you well. Honest to God, I wish you well. I know that there are a lot of good and decent people out there who have been reading the propaganda, a lot of it coming out of Russia that is being posted on Facebook and other sites. It's not all coming out of Russia. A fair amount of it's coming out of other countries, too, and some of it's coming here.
Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And you're believing this stuff, and you're being lied to by multimillionaire Sean Hannity or multimillionaire, fill in the blank, right? The hosts over at Fox News. But you're being lied to. And welcome back. What an amazing day, huh? Tim in Aloha, Oregon. Hey, Tim, what's up?
Tom, excuse me.
Hey, you too, huh?
Yeah,
I keep coughing because I've got
James,
this damn smoke in my lungs.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's pretty bad. But James, this guy you talked to, that's a summary of actually what's going on in this country. They complain about why the Republicans haven't done anything to Trump. It's just that old saying, in for a penny, if you understand what I mean. When that lunatic got into office and he was a disaster right from the beginning, they gave the excuse that, oh, he's never been in politics and this will eventually clear up and so forth. And then it started getting worse day by day, and they think, wait a minute, if we go after him, we're going to go after our base too. You see what I mean? It's as simple as that. And they're not concerned about overall numbers. They're concerned about the electoral college system. They're working on that right now as we speak. Forget gerrymandering, redistricting, the Russian interference, Saudi money, and I could go on and on, Koch Industries. 60-plus million people still voted for that lunatic. You see what I mean? That's what you have to understand.
63
million. And what he's doing now, no matter what he does, every time the man opens his mouth, he's either jeopardizing or destroying people's lives, and that's okay. And they know that. They say, how much worse can it get? And his popularity still stayed, fairly close to between 42 and 43%. If it was 4.3%, that would be too much, based on having any kind of intelligence. You see, so it's as simple as that.
Well, it's pretty shocking. I mean, Tim, if Herbert Hoover, at the depth of the Great Depression, 3 years of the Great Depression, it started in October of 1929, and by November of 1932, the election. Herbert Hoover had done nothing. I mean, he finally in the last 6 months, he threw a few small, measures at it, trying to look like he was doing something, but basically he did nothing. And all America knew that it was his responsibility. It happened on his watch. It happened because of the policies of the two Republicans that preceded him. And still, Herbert Hoover got 40% of the vote. I'm thinking that there's like 40% of Americans who are just like so gullible to Republican propaganda that they can't be reached.
Right. There's a logical explanation. You can look at like the Midwest and the South, all the major areas where there's red states, and I've a couple of degrees in history, and I've studied it. And you look back and you look at military, industrial, educational variables through generations, and I get to the point where I think right now there's a physical inability for them to actually reason. It's scary stuff. You can talk to these people. I have friends and relatives all over the country, and it's scary. That whole guns, gods, and gay routine, it's still as relevant as it's ever been. And that is
and
one
the
of
subtext.
That's going to be
the
a key
subtext
element.
of all of that stuff is straight white men. Tim, how's your air there in Aloha? I'm not sure where you are.
It's not very good. I just have a little, but it's been the air quality's been horrible around here, And I've lived in this community for 31 years, and it's bad. We're staying.
I was
in.
wearing a KN95.
We have some filters and stuff that work with it, but it's scary stuff. The people I feel sorry for are the ones that have respiratory problems. You can't even go outside in this nightmare, Although we've got a little rain coming, so that ought to help.
Yeah, hopefully tonight it's a 50% chance, which could work for us or against us. Tim, stay safe. Thanks a lot for the call. It's great to hear from you. We'll be right back. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, the True People's Media. Stick around. Hi, Thom Hartmann here. In my new book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, I'll be taking you from the birth of America as a revolt against monopoly, remember the Boston Tea Party, to the largely successful efforts of both Presidents Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt and other like-minded leaders to constrain corporations' monopolistic urges, to the massive changes in the rules of business starting during the Reagan Revolution that have brought us into the cancer stage of capitalism. In the foreword by Ralph Nader, he says, "This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation." End quote. It's the fourth in my Hidden History series, available where all fine books are sold. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy starts with you. Tag, you're it. You. Tag, you're it. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. I hope you're finding time to just kind of chill out, take a break, take a bath, read a book, watch a movie that doesn't have anything to do with the events of the day. I just read an ad on the commercial side of this show for CBDistillery.com, one of our sponsors, and it was about how CBD can help you get to sleep, and it starts out, you're on edge all day and don't sleep well at night, right? And I think that that's a lot of us. And we need to take care of ourselves. So and that's not a pitch for CBD. It's figure out other ways. But Rudy in Atlanta. Hey Rudy, what's on your mind?
Tom, I ran into a guy like that last week, and
like James.
Yes, yes, I ran into a guy like that, and I was frozen. I stood there and I just looked at him with my hands behind my back, and I was frozen, Tom, because this guy was so on 10 about Trump and people lying on this guy. And you would think that this Bob Woodward book would change some of these folks' minds. And actually, I think that it's heightened these people, and we're in a dangerous spot because when people cannot be reckoned with, it's almost like Jim Jones to me, whatever the guy named that led the flop.
Yeah, Jim Jones.
But this is scary business, Tom, because that guy sounded just like James.
Yeah. Rudy, I think that what's happening is not a new thing in American politics. I think that probably if we were to step in a time machine and go back to Civil War times, we would find the same sorts of things. But you don't have to go that far back. I mentioned during the last break that Herbert Hoover got 40% of the vote when he ran against Franklin Roosevelt. In fact, more than 40%, as I recall. And, I think this is a tribal thing. I think that there is this sense of Donald Trump is a member of my tribe. Donald Trump represents my tribe, and tribalism is an extension of familyism, right? We are wired, as are all social animals, particularly social mammals, to defend family first, and then community, local community, tribe, clan, whatever you may call it. And the question you have to ask then, Rudy, is if that's the case. If these people feel so solidly identified with Trump and his people, and basically the Republican Party that supports him, because they feel a tribal identity with him, what is the core nature of that tribal identity? And I would submit to you that it's all about being white.
Well, let me ask you this silly question, Tom. If that's the case, wouldn't you want to fall on the sword for someone that had better qualities than Donald Trump? If I was going to hang my hat on someone, fall on the sword for someone, it sure as hell won't be Donald Trump. And this guy, I don't understand it, Tom. If I was
Rudy, you've heard the old saying, if he may be an SOB, but he's my SOB or our SOB.
Yeah.
I think that's, they've adapted themselves to this. You've got now Christians who are saying, well, he's like King Cyrus of Persia. Well, King Cyrus of Persia was a bad guy who was not Jewish or Christian or anything, but he gave the Jews a little bit of shelter for a short while, and therefore he was viewed as a hero. And so you've got these evangelical Christians saying, you can Google this, that he's King Cyrus. He's the reincarnation of King Cyrus. Yeah, he may not be a Christian. Yeah, he may be a terrible guy. Yeah, he had affairs on all three of his wives. He steals money. He ripped off his father and his family. The guy is awful, but he's on our side. He's part of our tribe. He's going to protect our tax-exempt status, which is, what the people like Jerry Falwell are concerned about, because that's how they become multimillionaires. So there's that tribal aspect again. And, like I said, I think that the largest part of this is white. I am not hearing people who are not white making these kinds of defenses of Donald Trump, number one. And number two, you've got some people who think that, he's a big boon to Christianity because he's going to protect the tax-exempt status of churches, even when they break the law and engage in politics. And, they're all excited about that. I'm not sure that there's any other tribal affiliation for Trump, other than the grifters and the criminals, and they're very few in number, Rudy. Am I missing something here?
I think, I don't know, Tom, because the little hair I have on my head, it's about going. I've given up because I've heard enough, man, and people that I thought were logical, logical people that you would think were logical, people that you could rationalize with, are trying to validate this guy, and I just don't talk to him, Tom. You were good to give James the couple of minutes that you did, and I understand because you need to show people what we're dealing with, but I can't do it. Thank you so much,
I get
Tom.
it, Rudy. You're welcome. Thanks a lot, Rudy. See, I think that there's a real tragedy unfolding right in front of us. And we just saw, the example of that. And that is that the lies that are being promoted in the United States by Donald Trump and the people around him, and frankly by foreign actors who are extremely active right now on Facebook in particular and also on Twitter, those lies are being believed. And they're being believed by Americans who may, in many cases, have the very best of intentions.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are Omaha Steaks, gourmet you can trust. More information at omahasteaks.com, code TOM. CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. The Clean Phone Pro, phone sanitizer and charger. More info at thenewdealshop.com. Plexiderm Wrinkle Reducer, real science, real results. More info at plexiderm.com, code TOM. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom. And TEEF, TEEF, Smarter Pet Dental Health. For more information, teef.com, code TOM.
We say fight back!
Well, it's Monday. It's a great start to a new week as we are moving, kind of headlong into the election season here. And America is in deep and substantial and real need of a good progressive television network. And we just happen to have one right here. Have you been telling your friends about Free Speech TV? It's pretty important stuff, letting folks know where they can find good progressive programming, because there is good progressive programming, and it's right here. It's right here. But it doesn't continue without your help. And, I know that that's, it's the way it is. It's produced as a result. I mean, this is some really brilliant and farsighted thinking back 19, 20 years ago when Free Speech TV was first started, was the idea that there would be journalism that was free of bias, journalism and reporting and opinion that was free of, any corporation or any billionaire saying, here, say this as I pass out some money your way. We've got this $10,000 match from Andrew in San Diego. If we hit our goal at the end of the fund drive, that's a pretty big deal. Mike in San Francisco has covered all our hard costs. So we've got a couple of really good people here helping us out. And now we need you to make this happen. 877-378-8669. You can call now, and or anytime during the program, 877-378-8669 with a $20 gift to Free Speech TV. You have your choice of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the sticker that says Fight for Democracy, or a set of 3 stainless steel straws. What a cool thing, you know? It's like, I love it. That's with a $20 gift. With a $50 gift, you can have your choice of one of the 3, the Free Speech TV webcam cover, the tote bag that says change never happens from the top down, and the postcard pack, Fight for Democracy. With a $75 gift, there's the official Thom Hartmann Program mug, or your choice of the Free Speech TV hat, which comes in, what was it Henry Ford used to say? We offer, any color anybody wants as long as it's black. And it was the Model T, and that's the case with this hat. So that's a $75 gift. With a $100 gift, there is a pair of face masks, one for you and one for anybody you'd like to share it with. And it says, what we can grow from crisis. It's, a thought-provoking face mask. A nice idea. And face masks, of course, are increasingly an important part of our lives, just something that, we don't get by without. With a $120 gift, there is the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt. That's, or your choice of one of 3 books. You can either have the t-shirt or a book. And among the books, there are 3 choices. There is The Hidden History of the War on Voting, which is the book that came out about 6 months ago from me. I wrote the book. And it's about the Republican war on voting. I mean, it goes back to the founding of the Republic, but most of the book is about the modern-day Republican war on voting. There is my newest book. It just came out. It literally was just released last week, or the week before last, titled The Hidden History of Monopoly, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream. And it's a pretty timely book. Ralph Nader wrote the foreword to it. And in that foreword, he said words to the effect of, this is one of the best books that's been written on this topic in a while. In fact, here's exactly what he said. This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation. I have read many books on monopolistic practices and have written a few on the subject. None have the potential to reach the moral imagination, and indignation of the American people where they live, work, and raise their families like Hartmann's engrossing volume. None for sure had the potential to reach so many members of Congress who are finally awakening to the long overdue accounting of monopoly's many costs. So Ralph Nader wrote just a wonderful foreword. So your choice of any one of those books. That's with a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, there is your choice. There's 2 Zoom meet and greets that we're going to have, one in October and one in November. The one in October will be on the 14th, and the one in November will be on the 18th. And we'll just all get together on a Zoom call for an hour and talk about whatever's on your mind. You can ask me anything you want, and I'll try to give you as honest and as it is answer. These are not recorded. This is kind of off-the-record conversation. And, I find them fascinating. I've met some really great people, and I think you'll find it interesting, too. So that's with a $240 gift. With a $360 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University Fall Box, which includes the I'm a Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the Democracy sticker, the Free Speech TV tote bag, the Democracy postcards, and the book on monopolies that I just read that piece from the foreword by Ralph Nader to you about. And that's with a $360 gift. With a $1,000 gift once this thing settles down, once this pandemic is over. But the larger picture here is that Free Speech TV is here for you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So there was a fascinating piece published in the Nation recently titled How to Dismantle White Supremacy. It was by Barbara Smith. She's a feminist, activist, and organizer, founder of the Combahee, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, River Collective, and a contributor to The Nation magazine. She's also the co-author of the Black Feminist Combahee River Collective Statement, and in 2005, she was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. SmithCaringCircle.com is her website, and The Barbara Smith is her Twitter handle. And sure enough, she is with us right now. Barbara, welcome to the program. Well, first of all, before we get to how to dismantle white supremacy, talk about exactly what it is and what the proportions are of this problem.
Well, hi, Tom. It's really nice to be with you. By white supremacy, I'm talking about that system that really overarches and overrides almost every aspect of life in the United States because of our origin story with the taking of the land of the indigenous people, which included, of course, removal of them from their environment and also genocide, and then with chattel enslavement. That's our origin story, and that has held on for more than 400 years, and we see that in the horrific events of this spring and summer. So it's a big system that affects almost every aspect.
Okay. And how do we dismantle this?
Well, my suggestion
Well, actually,
is
before we get to that, if I could, Barbara,
surely.
what is the primary mythology of white supremacy? Obviously, supremacy implies that white people are in charge or should be in charge. But what would a white supremacist say? This is why I believe this.
I can certainly respond to that question, but that's really not the level on which I was thinking on, because often when people think about white supremacy, they think about people who are involved in organized hate groups that often use violence to enforce their beliefs. What I'm talking about is why a black farmer, when he applies for a loan in a state like Missouri or wherever in the Midwest, why he has to wait like 380 plus days for a loan, whereas a white farmer who applies for the same loan from the same institution only has to wait about 2 weeks or 30 days.
Okay, so how do we dismantle this institution?
Say that again.
How do we dismantle white supremacy?
Well, my suggestion is that we need something, because it's such a huge system. My suggestion is that we need something on the scale of the Marshall Plan, which, of course, was the initiative started by the United States following World War II to restore Europe in all different ways. Everything had been dismantled and destroyed by the war. Institutions, the economy, the infrastructure. So that's what the Marshall Plan was. It was humongous. It cost billions with a B. And I think that the system of white supremacy is equally big and would need that kind of attention.
How would that be different from reparations, or is this a description of reparations using, different phraseology?
This is definitely not solely a reparations plan. I mentioned looking at reparations as a part of the economic initiatives, the economic solutions that would need to be deployed in order to deal with the black-white wealth gap in this country. And it's not just a black-white wealth gap. Other people of color, Latinx people, indigenous people also suffer that wealth gap between what their families have and what white families have as wealth, not as income, but as wealth. So reparations would be a part of it, but reparations don't address lack of quality education in inner city communities. This is much bigger. Reparations don't necessarily address what's happening with the COVID-19 epidemic, with the rates of both catching the disease and dying from the disease being about twice as high among African Americans. So this is bigger than reparations.
So you're talking about major structural changes across the United States. I mean, the two principal reasons, if my reading of the literature is correct, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the two principal reasons why Black and Hispanic people and Native American people are more likely to get COVID and more likely to die from COVID have to do with, number one, that they're more likely to be frontline workers who can't work from home, like white collar, who are mostly white workers, can.
Yes.
And they tend to live in higher density housing because it's cheaper. And number two, because they're less likely to have experienced good nutrition throughout their lives. And so they're more, again, as a consequence of low income or living in food deserts. And the consequence of that is that they're more likely to have heart disease or diabetes or obesity, the major risk factors for death associated with COVID-19. I don't see how you respond to those things in a kind of reparations way. Here's a $100,000 check or a $5,000 check. It seems to me that what you're talking about here, like with the Marshall Plan, is large structural change that ultimately, at the end of the day, will benefit everybody, but brings up people of color. Do I have that right?
You're right about that. And you mentioned reparations again. Just to be clear and honest, this is not a reparations recommendation solely. That's an important discussion for the United States to have. But there's also the reality that people of color, including African Americans and other people who are of African heritage, that they have lack of access to quality health care and may very well be underinsured or not insured at all. So the factors that you mentioned around diet, yes, but there's also the stress of living in a nation that seems to very frequently kill us for driving while black, sleeping while black, being in our apartments while black.
That's number three.
Stressors too.
Yeah, that's a great point. Which raises another question in my mind, Barbara. We know right now that African Americans who are in hospitals, who have insurance and they're getting treatment, with a white person sitting in the bed next to them in a two-person room, are less likely to get pain medication, for example. That's probably the most glaring example because of this mythology for 400 years that black people are impervious to pain. Because we thought of them, America thought of them as beasts of burden, essentially, initially. I mean, that was the whole point of slavery, or one of them. But that's still going on, and that's going on independent of how well funded the hospital is, how well educated the doctors are. I mean, how do we get to this core stuff that is that's why I was asking, the theology or the ideology of white supremacy. And we only have about a minute left, but how do we get to that stuff, Barbara?
Yeah, I think that's where, and that's not something that I wrote about very explicitly in the article that you are referring to. I wrote an earlier article, an op-ed for the Boston Globe that was published in June, where I talked about educational initiatives, having public health, public service announcements that would explain some things about what goes on in our nation and to get rid of those myths. You asked me about what do white supremacists believe. We could actually do educational initiatives to get rid of some of that, and that would include, of course, those doctors who have those really inaccurate beliefs about black people's bodies.
Yeah, and I don't think that they're even conscious of their beliefs. I think, that's how insidious this is. What do you think?
Yes, and there's a study, you probably, I wanted to say thank you for having read that study, the same one or read about that study that I did, which did, a huge survey of, I think, new doctors, like early in their career. In other words, not people who lived through Jim Crow and have those kinds of experiences of segregation. And even they, the younger doctors beginning their careers, had those myths.
Wow. Barbara Smith, the website smithcaringcircle.com, her Twitter handle, The Barbara Smith, and her new article in the Nation magazine, How to Dismantle White Supremacy. Barbara, thanks for dropping by.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Thom Hartmann Program.
Great talking with you. We'll be right back. It's 15 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stick around. And welcome back. Mike in Los Angeles. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Hi. I talked to you a few months ago. I want to present a hypothesis, and nobody seems to think about this, but the hypothesis is that Trump lied to what's his name?
It's okay, Mike. You know, why did Trump lie in your mind?
He lied to Woodward. Totally lied to him.
So you don't think he was trying to stop the panic, and which I'm interpreting as a panic in the stock market. If you think that he lied to Woodward about trying to stop a panic, why would he lie to Woodward?
Very good question. The thing is, he did it in order to make it look like he was a little bit more human than he is.
Mm.
And then,
so he was trying to fake empathy?
He was trying to fake empathy. That's exactly right. And I've heard lately, some of the people that work for Trump, they were talking about this. They said, well, don't you know that he didn't say anything about this? And they say, well, he was trying to help us. He didn't want to disturb us. He didn't want riots or anything like that. So he was just helping us. And I think it's so wrong. Also, now, this, if you stop and think about it, think about what was said. Was there any outside verification of that? And to my knowledge, it wasn't. It was only, the whole thing was only between him and Woodward.
Well, we've got the audio tapes, Mike.
The what? Yes.
Woodward has been releasing the audio tapes,
And I believe the audio tapes, and I believe exactly what he said. He said it.
Yeah.
But he had premeditated this whole thing. He picked Woodward, even though he knew Woodward hadn't been good to him in previous things. He knew about that, and he even mentioned it. That said somebody he was going to talk to Woodward. But he conned Woodward. He conned Woodward because he kept the whole thing all the way through, and then didn't say anything else. And so people are saying, he's a good guy. He did it for the right reasons. And that's all crap, I think.
So you think that when Trump told Woodward that this was a dangerous disease and and that he didn't want to cause a panic, that he was trying to convince Woodward that he had empathy, that he was actually a decent human being? I don't see it. I'm sorry.
I know. It's a little bit difficult to see. Remember,
it's a tough one.
About the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah.
I don't know if you recall, but the Dunning-Kruger effect says this is a type of cognitive bias in which people believe that they are smarter and more capable than they really are. Essentially, below the people who do not possess the skills needed to recognize their own conflict. Combination of pure self-awareness and low severe ability leads them to the overestimate.
I got it, Mike. Mike, I got to run. I'm sorry, we're hitting the break here, but it could be Dunning-Kruger effect. I mean, the flip side of Dunning-Kruger is also that people who don't have abilities overestimate their lack of abilities. It's a fascinating thing. Mike, thanks for the call, and thanks for bringing it all up. We'll be right back. You can help America return to democracy by telling friends and family how to listen to this and other great progressive programs. Tag You're It. So Hi, Thom Hartmann here. In my new book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, I'll be taking you from the birth of America as a revolt against monopoly, remember the Boston Tea Party, to the largely successful efforts of both Presidents Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt and other like-minded leaders to constrain corporations' monopolistic urges, to the massive changes in the rules of business starting during the Reagan Revolution that have brought us into the cancer stage of capitalism. In the foreword by Ralph Nader, he says, This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation. End quote. It's the fourth in my Hidden History series, available where all fine books are sold. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy starts with you. Tag, you're it. 21 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. And, I guess we've kind of gone through Trump's crimes and all that. I mean, let's just make it clear. He didn't just play down the virus. He said to Bob Woodward, I'm going to play it down because I don't want to create a panic. And again, I think what he was talking about was a stock market panic, because he's tried to panic us in every other regard. And he believed, and I think correctly, that the stock market staying high was the key to his reelection. And now he's got Jerome Powell jacking the stock market through the Fed, $7 trillion worth of stock and bond purchases. But he didn't just play it down. He denied its existence. He denied its danger. He called it a hoax that was being perpetrated by the Democratic Party. He explicitly said, don't wear a mask, and he wasn't going to. He promoted things like hydroxychloroquine that not only don't work, but increase your risk of a heart attack. He blamed China. He blamed the CDC. He pulled us out of the World Health Organization. He took absolutely no responsibility for this. He was questioning his medical experts. And then on top of that, he had these giant rallies. I mean, and now we're discovering that his political appointee, Michael Caputo, a Trump campaign official who has no medical background, no scientific background, no public health background, was put into the Department of Health and Human Services way back in April. You wonder why HHS and the Rachel Maddow did several shows about this. Why did the CDC go from having very strict guidelines to protect people in meatpacking plants to having recommendations that were watered down to begin with? She kept asking why. Why is this happening? I don't think she ever got a good answer to it. I would say maybe it has to do with Michael Caputo. Trump, he's the guy at HHS who's now in charge of the messaging. And there have been all kinds of reports coming out of HHS, coming out of CDC, coming out of other agencies underneath HHS, Health and Human Services, suggesting that basically, they're messing with science. And they're doing it to keep Trump's popularity up. Trump apparently believes that the extent to which he can pretend that there's no problem, and the stock market's up, have you noticed? That he's going to get reelected. And Robert Redfield has been doing the same thing. I just find the whole thing just shocking. New information out, by the way, this is fascinating, is from NBC News. They did studies of people, this is the CDC, speaking of the CDC, not something that got widely publicized, but it was published, actually. They looked at people in California, Colorado, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, North Carolina, Ohio, Tennessee, Utah, and Washington. And they asked people, half the people tested positive, half of them didn't, but they had similar, basically, lifestyles. And the one thing that they found that was twice as likely to happen, they asked them a whole bunch of things, from the people who didn't get COVID and the people who did get COVID. Did you go to stores? Did you wear a mask? Were you indoors? Did you have contact with anybody who was infected? And so, they had this whole big data set. And then they ran through the data and identified people who had COVID and people who didn't have COVID who had basically done all the same things. They had all gone to the store, they had all worn a mask, they had all, whatever it may be, or they didn't wear a mask, but they all did the same thing. And then they said, what's the difference between these two groups? Was it that they went to the theater? No, it turns out it wasn't that. Was it that and maybe that's just because there weren't enough theater visitors to make a data set. Was it because they went to the supermarket and didn't wear a mask? No, it wasn't that. What was it? Well, it was dining out. This from a piece by Appalachia Blue over at Democratic Underground. Both, actually, that's who posted this. Actually, this is by Erica Edwards with NBC News. Quote, NBC News, both groups generally reported similar activities such as going to church, gyms, and stores with one exception. going out to eat or having drinks at a bar or coffee shop. Those who tested positive for COVID-19 were approximately twice as likely to have reported dining at a restaurant than those who had negative test results. Those who were diagnosed without any known exposure to the virus were more likely to report having visited a bar or coffee shop in the previous 2 weeks. And today, I believe it's Florida, the bars are reopening. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's Texas. But there's one of these red states, the bars are reopening today. I mean, this is absolutely nuts. Oh, by the way, last thing here I wanted to share with you, and then I'll pick up your phone calls after the break. The Kamala Harris-Mike Pence vice presidential debate, it's going to be moderated by Susan Page. She is the Washington bureau chief for USA Today. Well, that sounds good, right? Except that she hosted a girls' night at her home back in November to honor Seema Verma, the administrator of Medicare and Medicaid services, Trump's top Medicaid official. Taxpayers paid about $3,000 for the party. Verma has a long history with Pence going back to his time as governor of Indiana. Amazing. Girls' night out for an administration official. That's going to be who's going to moderate the debate with Mike Pence.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And meanwhile, as far as I know, the Wisconsin Supreme Court is still holding up the ballots, and now they're trying to do something like this in Pennsylvania. We'll be back with your calls after this. Well, it's Monday. It's a great start to a new week as we are moving, kind of headlong into the election season here. And America is in deep and substantial and real need of a good progressive television network, and we just happen to have one right here. Have you been telling your friends about Free Speech TV? It's pretty important stuff, letting folks know where they can find good progressive programming, because there is good progressive programming, and it's right here. It's right here. But it doesn't continue without your help. And, I know that's, it's the way it is. It's produced as a result. I mean, this is some really brilliant and farsighted thinking back 19, 20 years ago when Free Speech TV was first started, was the idea that there would be journalism that was free of bias, journalism and reporting and opinion that was free of, any corporation or any billionaire saying, here, say this as I pass out some money your way. We've got this $10,000 match from Andrew in San Diego. If we hit our goal at the end of the fund drive, that's a pretty big deal. Mike in San Francisco has covered all our hard costs. So we've got a couple of really good people here helping us out. And now we need you to make this happen. 877-378-8669. You can call now and or anytime during the program. 877-378-8669 with a $20 gift to Free Speech TV. You have your choice of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the sticker that says Fight for Democracy, or a set of 3 stainless steel straws. What a cool thing, It's like, I love it. That's with a $20 gift. With a $50 gift, you can have your choice of one of the 3. The Free Speech TV webcam cover, the tote bag that says change never happens from the top down, and the postcard pack, Fight for Democracy. With a $75 gift, there's the official Thom Hartmann Program mug or your choice of the Free Speech TV hat, which comes in, what was it Henry Ford used to say? We offer, any color anybody wants as long as it's black. And it was the Model T, and that's the case with this hat. So that's a $75 gift. With a $100 gift, there is a pair of face masks, one for you and one for anybody you'd like to share it with. And it says, what we can grow from crisis. It's, a thought-provoking face mask. A nice idea. And face masks, of course, are increasingly an important part of our lives, just something that, we don't get by without. With a $120 gift, there is the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt. That's, or your choice of one of three books. You can either have the t-shirt or a book, and among the books there are three choices. There is The Hidden History of the War on Voting, which is the book that came out about 6 months ago from me. I wrote the book. And it's about the Republican war on voting. I mean, it goes back to the founding of the Republic, but most of the book is about the modern day Republican war on voting. There is my newest book. It just came out. It literally was just released last week, or the week before last, titled The Hidden History of Monopoly, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream. And it's a pretty timely book. Ralph Nader wrote the foreword to it. And in that foreword, he said words to the effect of, this is one of the best books that's been written on this topic in a while. In fact, here's exactly what he said. This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation. I have read many books on monopolistic practices and have written a few on the subject. None have the potential to reach the moral imagination, and indignation of the American people where they live, work, and raise their families like Hartmann's engrossing volume. None for sure had the potential to reach so many members of Congress who are finally awakening to the long overdue accounting of monopoly's many costs. So Ralph Nader wrote just a wonderful foreword. So your choice of any one of those books, that's with a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, there is your choice. There's two Zoom meet and greets that we're going to have, one in October and one in November. The one in October will be on the 14th, and the one in November will be on the 18th. And we'll just all get together on a Zoom call for an hour and talk about whatever's on your mind. You can ask me anything you want, and I'll try to give you as honest and as it is answer. These are not recorded. This is kind of off the record conversation, and I find them fascinating. I've met some really great people, and I think you'll find it interesting too. That's with a $240 gift. With a $360 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University Fall Box, which includes the I'm a Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the Democracy sticker, the Free Speech TV tote bag, the Democracy postcards, and the book on monopolies that I just read that piece from the foreword by Ralph Nader to you about. And that's with a $360 gift. With a $1,000 gift, once this thing settles down, once this pandemic is over. But the larger picture here is that Free Speech TV is here for you. On the Science Revolution this week, Dr. Michael Mann is here on climate change and the West on fire. Plus, there's a new study showing planet Earth may temporarily pass a dangerous 1.5 degrees Celsius warming limit by the middle of the next decade. This is a huge warning to us all. Former EPA official Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali drops by to warn us about creating an apocalyptic, devastated planet. Attorney for Earth Justice Bradley Marshall is here informing us about bomb trains. Earth Justice has just filed a legal challenge to stop them. And in Geeky Science, I'm looking at why the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine study was put on hold. Tune into the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are available. Just a couple of quick news things here I wanted to share with you before I pick up your phone calls. It's what a day, huh? Donald Trump is on his way to California to talk about the wildfires. And he has said on numerous occasions, in fact, he said it in his rally the other day, that the wildfires are the result of California not raking their forests. Now, he's cleaned up his comments a little bit since the Finnish prime minister said, I never told Trump that. He was saying you got to rake the forest floor and pick up all the dead limbs and all that kind of stuff. Now he's simply saying we need good forest management. You don't have that in California. Okay, fine. Well, of all the forest land in California, 39% of it is owned by private owners, private people. 2% 2% of it is managed by the state of California. And 57% of all the forests in California are owned and managed by Donald Trump, by the federal government. Do you think that's going to be brought up today? Somehow I doubt it. So, data point number one. Data point number two. Donald Trump was asked after his rally last night by a reporter with the Las Vegas Review-Journal, a local reporter. He said, aren't you concerned? You've got all these people indoors and you're indoors. Aren't you worried about, getting COVID yourself? You're 75 years old or however old he is, 74. And Trump said, I'm on stage and it's very far away. So I'm not at all concerned. Wait a minute. Trump knows that if he was close to the people in the audience, he would be at risk, which means that he knows that he's putting them at risk. James, if you're still listening, your president, who you love so much, just said basically he doesn't give a rat's ass about his followers' lives. They show up for the rallies, they're doing so at their own risk. And then finally, just to put a punctuation mark on what I was saying about HHS and CDC and all this kind of stuff, Trump tried to water down the findings on the pandemic's danger to children that the Centers for Disease Control was laying out. I'll get into more detail on that a little later on. I just wanted to put that out there right now for you. So anyhow, Dave in Federal Way, Washington. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Hey, not too much, Tom. Hey, I wanted to say that I completely agree with you about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. As a matter of fact, at this point, I'm like 90% sure, 99 maybe, even I don't know. I'm almost absolutely sure that's the only thing that's going to save our republic. I mean, the way the founders envisioned it anyways. And as far as I got to comment on James in his, what he said. Look, Alexander Lukashenko, the dictator of Belarus, okay, he said that, Alexei Navalny, the opposition to Vladimir Putin, was poisoned by Novichok, by German. He said he intercepted 2 German BND agents, okay, West German, or, Germany, intelligence agents discussing a fake news story about the Novichok. Now, you alluded to tribalism, all right? These sort of things work in a tribal structure, a tribal system, all right? That sort of absurd lie. You see what I'm saying? He intercepts, and he needs, Lukashenko needs Vladimir Putin right now, okay? And
desperately. That's why they're doing this summit. But Dave, let me just step into the window that you just opened here, the door that you just opened. If you want to be essentially a populist candidate, if you want to have populist politics, if you want to have the kind of politics where a majority of the population are outraged, they're looking for bad guys, and they will listen to pretty much anything anybody says, what you have to do is make them frightened. And that's what George W. Bush did to a certain extent after 9/11. Although, he said some nice words early on. Basically, most of the message of the Bush administration was, be afraid of those Muslim terrorists. But I would say even more so, 2010 was the year, 30 years into the Reaganomics experiment. It was the 30th year of the Reaganomics experiment that 50%, that the number of Americans in the middle class dropped below 50% for the first time since the 1940s or since the 1950s. And that, I would say, is what gave rise to people being willing to read this kind of propaganda on Facebook and organize themselves into these tribes, because they know that they're getting screwed. They know that their life isn't what their parents' lives were like. They know that things aren't going well. They're not sure exactly why. They certainly don't realize that it was Ronald Reagan who put it all in place and did it to them. And so, they're vulnerable. They're gullible. I think, people like James, are vulnerable to this kind of stuff. Like I said earlier, I think, probably the majority of the folks who buy this kind of stuff are basically white supremacists, whether they realize it or not. But a sizable minority, and this might be a 60-40 thing, are people who were just screwed by Reaganomics, and they're trying to figure out who screwed them.
Yeah. And let me just say for James, all right, Mohammed bin Salman, all right, is part of the House of Saud, okay? There is a certain amount of democracy used to pick the ruler of Saudi Arabia, okay? Mohammed bin Nayed, Mohammed bin Zayed, the ruler of the United Arab Emirates, who just negotiated the peace accords with Israel, Palestine, and everybody else, and Trump and Kushner and all them. He is a nice guy. Everybody says, "Oh, MBZ is nice." But check this out. MBZ is very anti-democracy. All right, he's extremely. That part's not being mentioned.
You show up in the UAE with a street sign, like a strike kind of sign or a political kind of sign saying MBZ shouldn't be the leader of the country, and you will be put in jail. You might be killed.
Yes, so if James wants to cavort with Donald Trump as a drinking buddy or as an uncle or something like this, fine. But he is forfeiting American democracy as it was envisioned by the founders. Like I said, we can be critical of Mohammed bin Salman for hacking somebody up with a hacksaw, a journalist. But there is a certain amount of democracy to become the ruler of Saudi Arabia. You have to go through a tribal democracy, a tribal confederation.
Right, but you have to have the right blood to begin with. You have to be a member of the right family. Dave, I got to move along, but thank you for your call. Paul in Woodinville. Hey, Paul, what's up?
Well, Tom, your conversation with was really less about debating the facts of coronavirus than it was the kabuki theater of him being unwilling to abandon a racist. And what makes me sick about people like him is why doesn't he have the guts just to defend his racism? I mean, that's what it is. Because he didn't make a single point, didn't land a glove about the facts of coronavirus. He was all over the place from, the other countries are lying about their statistics to these people didn't really die of coronavirus. They had underlying conditions and they died of something else. Well, you know what? My wife, then, she didn't die of breast cancer. She died of a respiratory arrest. And my sister didn't die of some untreatable, bizarre cancer. She died of a cardiac arrest. Nobody died of any. And honestly, Tom, the coronavirus doesn't do anything to you except whack out your immune system physiology. So, no, nobody died of anything. The coronavirus isn't alive. It's a virus that makes your body go haywire. Yeah, I guess if that's what he wants to see, he can't give it up. And so he was arguing with you. It wasn't a debate about the facts of coronavirus, which, by the way, what we were told was had enough. Because when Donald Trump told Bob Woodward it's 5% deadly, well, that was apparent in the statistics. I've been keeping a national statistic that says, we're right around 5.6 to 5.96% fatalities. But I was accepting that Rush Limbaugh said, remember, this thing's just about 2% deadly. That's nothing. Well, listen, 5% death rate is not 5 times more deadly than the flu. It's 50 times because, as you said, Tom, the flu is the death rate is about 0.1%. So when Rush Limbaugh said it's 2%, that's 20% more deadly than the flu. And we talked on this program about the things you wouldn't do on a daily basis if they had a 2% fatality rate. Like you wouldn't drive your car only to work and home. Otherwise, you'd be dead twice by April 8th, in a year. What we were told was bad enough. I don't know why he's saying Trump didn't lie. What has happened has been bad enough.
Well, it's tribalism, as I said. Yeah, I get it, Paul. I get it. Your points are very well made, as usual. We'll be right back. It's 45 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. What an amazing time we're living through, huh? I mean, at a certain point, you just kind of have to step back a little bit and look out and go, wow, this is incredible. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
I mean, it might be tough. It might be terrible. I know there's, literally millions of Americans who are afraid that they're on the edge of homelessness. And it's incredible. And welcome back. Frank in Hood River, Oregon. Hey, Frank, you're just up the road from us. What's up? How are you guys doing
Hi,
there?
Tom. I'm sorry. I was waiting. I really think the very best thing that Trump and Biden can do is to just lay out all the crimes and misdeeds that Trump has done since he's been president and even before he was president. I mean, his whole life he's been a cheater. He's trying to cheat in the elections now. But I don't, people need to be reminded what kind of man is going to be running the country for the next 4 years if it's Trump. And I really think even the Republicans, if they see these facts laid out with no punches pulled, everything that he's done, the environment, foreign policy, everything, you're going to get a lot of Republican voters coming over and voting against Trump, not so much for Biden, but against Trump. And I think it will be a slam dunk. I think that's the best thing that Biden and Harris can do. Do you think that they are going to do this?
Yeah, I think that,
emphasize
they're spending
Trump, all that he has done to hurt our country and destroy our country.
Right. There's a bunch of groups out there, the Lincoln Cabin or the Lincoln Republicans, excuse me, and others who are basically trying to say to voters, Trump is terrible, therefore vote for Biden. And, I think that most Americans have known that for the better part of 3 years. In fact, I think that that's part of his appeal to the people who like to, quote, own the libs and all that kind of stuff. And really what we need to be doing, and it shouldn't be Republican groups like the Lincoln Republicans doing it, but what we need to be doing is building an affirmative case for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Here's why these people should be president and vice president. Here's what they will do. Here's what the Democratic Party has always stood for. Here's what the Democratic Party, wants to do going forward. So I'm with you. I think that we need to be building that case, Frank, in a very positive way. And I think that there's a strong case to be built. Bernie over the weekend was on TV saying, Biden should talk more about the economic stuff he's going to do because he's already committed to it. He's got the most progressive platform in the history of the United States.
Yeah, but Tom, I'm scared that Biden and Trump and the Democrats are just going to give pretty much a pass to Trump for the horrible, horrible things he's doing. This is the worst president in history. And they're just going to basically not even mention you can do both, Frank. People. Pardon me?
You can do both. You can talk about, the American carnage that Trump and Miller and Pence have brought us, and then say, and we're going to bring America together, and we're going to heal this country. I think, I really got this hit over the weekend. I was watching this clip of Joe Biden talking to a woman who had lost her husband. She was an older woman, and her husband had recently died. And Joe listened to her story, and then he said, they just never leave you. The pain never leaves, but the memory of them never leaves. And she said, you're so right. And it suddenly hit me as I was watching that. This is a guy who's probably going to be less likely to send our soldiers to war. He understands the pain of somebody dying in your family. And I thought,
look what he did to the Kurds. Look what he did to the Kurds.
Trump did. Yeah, no, Trump stabbed him in the back. And the Kurds have been our allies since before World War II. Yeah, I'm with you. Frank, thank you for the call. I mean, the Kurds were... anyway, we'll be right back. Stick around. The Hidden History of Monopoly tells how Robert Bork, that guy from the Reagan era, transformed corporate America and destroyed the American dream. So it turns out back in November, the spy agencies in the United States were notifying the Trump administration that something's going on in China. Looks like another SARS outbreak. Maybe we should get ready for this. It was ignored. I've got a new video up over at thomhartmann.com for the supporters of our program that basically goes through the whole timeline. All the way from, actually going back to 2018 when Trump disbanded 3 different anti-pandemic agencies in the Department of Homeland Security, the National Security Council, and the executive branch. Just closed them down, fired the people. That was the end of that. how he ignored the intelligence in November, he ignored the intelligence in December, he ignored the epidemic now coming into the United States in January, he ignored it in February, just going the blow-by-blow timeline. And I think it's really worth having it all in one place, you know, a good recap, a good summary of this that you can refer to and you can share with your friends. It's all over at thomhartmann.com. You can check it out. Oh, welcome back. Christina in Ada, Michigan. Hey, Christina, what's on your mind today?
Well, when I was watching the news a couple days ago, when the Woodward story came out, and they had done a few of the different blurbs in Donald's Word by him, and he said how it was affecting children, and he knew it. Right. But then I believe it was just not much after that he's telling, which I knew this was wrong, that kids have great immune systems. It doesn't affect them. Well, if you've had a child in school, you're never going to be as sick as you are as when they're in kindergarten and first grade. So I knew then that was a lie. But how could any parent be okay with somebody who's literally trying to kill your children?
Well, the number of children who die from this is fairly small, but you're absolutely right, Christina. Any of us who have been parents know that the first 2 or 3 years of preschool, or if your kid starts being socially schooled at kindergarten, the first couple of years that they're hanging out with all kinds of other kids are the 2 or 3 years that you and your spouse and everybody else in your family are every other week going to get another nasty cold, because the kids are constantly bringing diseases home that they transmit to each other, even though they don't get them in a particularly bad fashion. And so what makes you think they're not going to bring COVID home? And, it may not kill the kids the percentage of children who die from COVID is very, very small. But, hey, they bring it home, which means mom and dad get it, which means that aunts and uncles get it, which means grandparents get it, which means that the person next door might get it. I mean, this is just, I do not think this is the time to open the schools. And, and spot on. What you said is absolutely the case. Christina, thank you for the call. Gary in Los Angeles. Hey, Gary, what's up?
Hey, Tom, thanks. You are missing the really important aspect of the whole King Cyrus thing. Cyrus was king of Persia at the same time that Nebuchadnezzar was king of Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar had invaded Palestine, captured the Hebrews, enslaved them, took them to Babylon, and he destroyed the original temple, Solomon's temple. Cyrus liberated the Hebrews, sent them back to Palestine, and he built the second temple, the temple that the Romans eventually destroyed. The evangelicals, have been saying for years that they think Trump is the modern Cyrus because they believe that he will build the third temple and the
right. And if you go back to 1974 to Hal Lindsey's late great Planet Earth, and then to all the books that came along with that about that really sparked the modern day evangelical movement, or the modern day last days part of the evangelical movement, they believe that Jesus will not return to earth until that temple is rebuilt. That's why back in the early 80s, this guy named Goodman went onto the Temple Mount with a tent and a machine gun, killed a whole bunch of Arabs, tried to put up the tent before he was stopped, thinking that once that temple was erected, it would be a temporary second temple or third temple, and therefore Jesus would return to earth that very minute.
Well, but the temple has to be built according to very specific architecture, the real temple. And the Dome of the Rock, the Muslim Dome of the Rock, is on the Temple Mount. Now, I belonged for a brief time in the 70s as a young man. I belonged to a charismatic church in Florida, so I learned a lot about the way they think.
So did I in Lansing, Michigan. It was actually in the it was the early 70s, and it was the North Lansing Church of God, and that's where I was exposed to a lot of this stuff.
Right, and so, like I say, they believe that Trump is going to build the third temple, which will make it possible for the second coming. They also, a lot of them believe that the apocalypse is going to be a nuclear war centered on Israel.
Yeah, because I will destroy you with fire, not with water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And think about it.
Yeah, I get it.
If they were to build a temple on the Temple Mount, that would mean destroying the Dome of the Rock. That would trigger a huge war.
Oh, it absolutely would. It absolutely would. Gary, thank you for sharing that with us. Melver in Thunder City, Alabama. Just a minute to the end of the hour, Melver. You got a quick one?
I just wanted to remind people that I'm in my 80s, and back in the 1950s, Khrushchev was in this country, and he said that this country would be destroyed from within, that Russia intended to do that. Putin
that was Khrushchev, yes.
Has spent his life in the KGB. They have not abandoned this. And Trump is a traitor working for Putin. And all these problems we have facing us will not be corrected until somebody investigates this. And I'm very concerned about the government. Why have they not done something about this?
It's a good question, Melver. It has never, the association between Donald Trump and Russia has never been investigated by our government. All those investigations have been successfully blocked. Thank you for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are Omaha Steaks, gourmet you can trust. More information at omahasteaks.com, code TOM. CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. The Clean Phone Pro, phone sanitizer and charger. More info at thenewdealshop.com. Plexiderm Wrinkle Reducer, real science, real results. More info at plexiderm.com, code TOM. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom. And TEEF, TEEF, Smarter Pet Dental Health. For more information, teef.com, code TOM.
We say fight back!
Well, it's Monday. It's a great start to a new week as we are moving, kind of headlong into the election season here. And America is in deep and substantial and real need of a good progressive television network, and we just happen to have one right here. Have you been telling your friends about Free Speech TV? It's pretty important stuff, letting folks know where they can find good progressive programming, because there is good progressive programming, and it's right here. It's right here. But it doesn't continue without your help. And, I know that that's, it's the way it is. It's produced as a result. I mean, this is some really brilliant and farsighted thinking back 19, 20 years ago when Free Speech TV was first started, was the idea that there would be journalism that was free of bias, journalism and reporting and opinion that was free of, any corporation or any billionaire saying, here, say this as I pass out some money your way. We've got this $10,000 match from Andrew in San Diego. If we hit our goal at the end of the fund drive, that's a pretty big deal. Mike in San Francisco has covered all our hard costs. So we've got a couple of really good people here helping us out. And now we need you to make this happen. 877-378-8669. You can call now and or anytime during the program. 877-378-8669 with a $20 gift to Free Speech TV. You have your choice of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the sticker that says Fight for Democracy, or a set of 3 stainless steel straws. What a cool thing, It's like, I love it. That's with a $20 gift. With a $50 gift, you can have your choice of one of the 3. The Free Speech TV webcam cover, the tote bag that says change never happens from the top down, and the postcard pack, Fight for Democracy. With a $75 gift, there's the official Thom Hartmann Program mug or your choice of the Free Speech TV hat, which comes in, what was it Henry Ford used to say? We offer, any color anybody wants as long as it's black. And it's the Model T, and that's the case with this hat. So that's a $75 gift. With a $100 gift, there is a pair of face masks, one for you and one for anybody you'd like to share it with. And it says, what we can grow from crisis. It's, a thought-provoking face mask. A nice idea. And face masks, of course, are increasingly an important part of our lives, just something that, we don't get by without. With a $120 gift, there is the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt. That's, or your choice of one of 3 books. You can either have the t-shirt or a book. And among the books, there are 3 choices. There is The Hidden History of the War on Voting, which is the book that came out about 6 months ago from me. I wrote the book. And it's about the Republican war on voting. I mean, it goes back to the founding of the Republic, but most of the book is about the modern-day Republican war on voting. There is my newest book. It just came out. It literally was just released last week, or the week before last, titled The Hidden History of Monopoly, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream. And it's a pretty timely book. Ralph Nader wrote the foreword to it. And in that foreword, he said words to the effect of, this is one of the best books that's been written on this topic in a while. In fact, here's exactly what he said. This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation. I have read many books on monopolistic practices and have written a few on the subject. None have the potential to reach the moral imagination, and indignation of the American people where they live, work, and raise their families like Hartmann's engrossing volume. None for sure had the potential to reach so many members of Congress who are finally awakening to the long overdue accounting of monopoly's many costs. So Ralph Nader wrote just a wonderful foreword. So your choice of any one of those books. That's with a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, there is your choice. There's 2 Zoom meet and greets that we're going to have, one in October and one in November. The one in October will be on the 14th, and the one in November will be on the 18th. And we'll just all get together on a Zoom call for an hour and talk about whatever's on your mind. You can ask me anything you want, and I'll try to give you as honest and as it is answer. These are not recorded. This is kind of off-the-record conversation. And, I find them fascinating. I've met some really great people, and I think you'll find it interesting, too. That's with a $240 gift. With a $360 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University Fall Box, which includes the I'm a Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the Democracy sticker, the Free Speech TV tote bag, the Democracy postcards, and the book on monopolies that I just read that piece from the foreword by Ralph Nader to you about. And that's with a $360 gift. With a $1,000 gift once this thing settles down, once this pandemic is over. But the larger picture here is that Free Speech TV is here for you.
involved an imaginative leap that will astonish us.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. As probably most of you know, I lived in Germany for a year. I speak clumsily, but I speak German. And when I was living in Germany, I was living just down the road from an old friend of mine, literally old. He actually passed away a few years ago. Who had been a soldier in Hitler's army. He was drafted. He was made an intelligence officer because he spoke 7 languages. He was parachuted into what was then called Kurdistan. It's now part of Iran, and was arrested there and imprisoned throughout the war, and became a vegetarian as a result of that experience. Kind of, basically trying to make a deal with God, and came back from the war committed to doing good works in the world, and started communities for orphaned kids all around the world. His name was Gottfried Müller. And he introduced me, or I got to know a number of elderly Germans as a result of my association with Mr. Müller, including one, who was still, of the opinion that Adolf Hitler, his biggest mistake was invading Russia a year too early before he was ready. In other words, they were still, my friend was not still a Nazi. He was horrified by the Nazis, and spent his entire life doing penance, basically. But this guy that I met, was still a Nazi, was proud of it. And a little later on, a year or so after that we lived in Germany the year of 87, 88. And a couple of years later, myself and a friend of mine by the name of Scott Berg first went to Austria and met with the Prince of Liechtenstein, Prince Alfred, and then met with a fellow who literally wrote the book on the religion of the Nazis. And there's a whole long story associated with that I won't bore you with. It was absolutely fascinating to us. But in the course of that, we went to Wewelsburg, which was going to be Hitler's new Vatican. It's a city that was entirely taken over by the SS. We visited this SS cemetery that is immaculately kept, fresh flowers every single day. And, in fact, driving into town, one of the houses had skulls and bones around the door. These are people who take their Nazism very seriously. And we encountered a small group of elderly Nazis with black candles and sitting on bales of hay, in this giant room attached to a restaurant that we were eating at. And when they discovered that I had looked in that room, they kicked us out of the restaurant. And, we're very freaked out. So, I have some familiarity with the Nazis, right? Having known real Nazis and having, been there. And one of the things that consistently in talking with people that I knew who were Nazis or who had been Nazis, and I'm talking real German Nazis now. This was back in the 80s. These people were in their 60s then. And one of the things that I know is that one of their major influences was a booklet that was published in 1902 in Russia. It was written by the Russian secret police on behalf of Tsar Nicholas II, because Nicholas was of the opinion, Nicholas was, he wasn't a particularly good Tsar, king of Russia, and he was a kleptocrat. He wanted everything. And the institutions, some of the institutions of Russia, particularly the banking institutions, were pushing back on some of the things he was doing. And so he had this thing drafted. It was called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, that said that Jews were trying to undermine and destroy Russia from within. And that what they did on the high Jewish holy holidays, and we're heading toward one right now, was that they would literally drink the blood or drain the blood from children, from non-Jewish children, from white children, and use that blood to make matzah. Use it to make, the unleavened bread that you would eat around Passover ceremonies and things like that. This was a big deal. I mean, this was widely, and then Hitler came to power, and in Mein Kampf he references this. He actually commissioned a children's book that was a children's version of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, and had it distributed to every school in Germany. I had conversations with my friend Armin Lehmann about this, who was the 15-year-old courier who brought Hitler the news that the war was lost and was there when Hitler committed suicide. Armin wrote a book about it. I've talked about this before. Armin's been on my show. Armin's dead now, but back more than a decade ago, he was on my show many times talking about these issues. And the kids believed it. Everybody believed it. It was a cult. That they believed that the Jews were a cult that stole and abused, including killing, white children. So Gregory Stanton published a piece in justsecurity.org that I tweeted over the weekend. You can find it on my Twitter timeline if you're looking for that particular story, or you can just Google it. It's titled "QAnon is a Nazi Cult Rebranded." And he starts out saying, a secret cabal is taking over the world. They kidnap children, slaughter, and eat them to gain power from their blood. They control high positions in government, banks, international finance, the news media, and the church. They want to disarm the police. They promote homosexuality and pedophilia. They plan to mongrelize the white race so it will lose its essential power. And then he said, does that sound familiar? This is pretty much the story that you get from QAnon right now. And he said, it's actually, he said it was called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It was written by Russian anti-Jewish propagandists around 1902. Central to his mythology was the blood libel, which claimed that Jews kidnapped and slaughtered Christian children and drained their blood to mix in the dough for matzahs consumed on Jewish holidays. The Nazis published a children's book of the protocol, and he goes through the whole thing. And then he goes through the history of this. And now you've got QAnon saying that the Jewish billionaire George Soros and Jews who control the media, and they, they'll point out, hey, Wolf Blitzer's Jewish, didn't you know that? That kind of stuff. This is, QAnon, and they're saying, oh, well, these people want open borders so that brown children can invade America and mongrelize the white race. This is part of the story of QAnon. The so-called deep state is largely the Jewish deep state. And now in Germany, as he pointed out in Just Security, over 200,000 of the new Nazis, the neo-Nazis, have now taken the QAnon pledge. They've embraced this. He says in the 30s, millions of Europeans were unemployed. Violent battles between Nazis and communists raged in city streets. Democratic governments were powerless. And today, the American people suffer from a plague. Millions of Americans have lost their jobs. Angry mobs roam American cities and battle militarized police and heavily armed militias. The American government seems paralyzed. Dictators rule Russia and China. Islamic fascists rule Saudi Arabia and the old Ottoman and Persian empires. The American president appeases Russia, scapegoats China, and looks the other way as Putin and bin Salman murder their opponents. Now, there have been a few Republicans who have called this out. Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, Ben Sass have all said, no, wait a minute, we don't want that. But how did a Nazi cult get rebranded and have this much power and influence in America? This is amazing.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And now Donald Trump is coming out saying that the state should be able to simply kill people without any judicial process. Just shoot them dead. And welcome back. Rosetta in Beaverton, Oregon. Hey, Rosetta, I hope you're staying safe. The fires are just a little bit south of you.
Yeah, the air quality is not good, but we're staying in the house.
Okay.
I'm calling today in order to talk about why the Trump supporters voted for him in the past and why they will probably vote for him in the future, and why nothing anybody says, no matter how many lies, or as Trump says he could shoot somebody in the road, they will still vote for him. And the reason for that is because the Heritage Foundation basically gave him a list of judges, and Trump is appointing 250 judges that they want. And it doesn't matter who he is, because he'll be gone in a short time, but the judges will live on for 40 years.
You're absolutely right, Rosetta. Although it was the Federalist Society, not the Heritage Foundation, but you know, they're kind of twins. They were both funded by money from the Koch network and other right-wing billionaires and right-wing foundations. So yeah, good point. And I think you're right. I think that, you know, the judiciary is extraordinarily powerful. It is right now. It's the judiciary in Wisconsin that's holding up the mailing of mail-in ballots, and I believe it's the judiciary in Pennsylvania that's doing the same thing. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, this is potent and dangerous stuff. Rosetta, thank you for the call, and thanks for pointing that out. It's a really important piece of the puzzle. Robert in Santa Maria, California. Hey, Robert, what's up?
How you doing, buddy? I'm glad you're doing okay up there. I talked to you last part of last year about getting some more fire planes, like getting 10 747 converted fire planes where they could actually literally make it rain and put a fire out in a day. And now look what's going on. And I've actually been researching fire planes, and they cost about $10 million to buy a fire plane. But if you rent them, there's a company that now took over renting them. They're $10,000 or $29,000 a day, and they're $16,000 a run, and then that doesn't include the pilots and the material that they're dropping. And the material that they're dropping, actually, if it's so hot, it doesn't retard it. The fire retardant doesn't retard it. And so, and now the company is actually, if they want to reserve planes, they can't. There's two other countries, Canada and another one, that is put in if they have fires that they can get a plane. So if we might not even be able to get a plane down here if it gets so bad. But I was thinking we need to use the air heater. I'd like to see you do like some sort of telethon, or $10 million. I know like Oprah would put in, Jeff Bezos would put in, and a lot of people would go and buy these planes and just have.
Well, what about FEMA? FEMA's sitting on billions of dollars. I mean, Trump just he just took $54 billion out of FEMA, to try to pass out to unemployed people. FEMA should be buying these planes. I mean, there's entire airplane graveyards now that most of the 747s have been retired. There's lots and lots of airplanes out there if they want to buy them and retrofit them. Why weren't they doing this years ago? Anyhow, we'll be back. It's coming up on 20 minutes past the hour. Stick around. Daily rants and weekly op-eds at HartmannReport.com. It's free and there's no ads. HartmannReport.com. So two interesting little stories here that I think kind of abut. Down in Los Angeles, there was a guy who walked up to a police car and shot two LA County Sheriff's officers. Apparently trying to kill them. Both of them are in the hospital. It looks like both of them are going to survive, but we have no idea how badly damaged they're going to be, and odds are probably pretty badly. Keep them in your thoughts or prayers or whatever. But that crime was compounded by a tweet from the LA County Sheriff's Department, LASDHQ, the LA County Sheriff's Headquarters. This is their Twitter handle, is at LASDHQ, that said, and I quote, "To the protesters blocking the entrance and exit of the hospital emergency room yelling, 'We hope they die,' referring to 2 LA sheriffs ambushed today in Compton. Do not block emergency entries and exits to the hospital. People's lives are at stake when ambulances can't get through." Now, that's pretty alarming, right? People trying to prevent the sheriff's deputies from getting treated in the hospital and shouting, "We hope they die." The LA County Sheriff's Department has gone silent on this now because it turns out video has emerged. Who realized that they had, surveillance cameras in hospital emergency rooms and parking lots, and that people might have even shown up with cell phone cameras. And there was no crowd, and nobody was chanting, "We hope they die," and nobody was blocking the exits or the entrances, and it was just a lie. Sort of like the blood libel lie, like, oh yeah, they've got children in Comet Pizza or whatever it is in Washington, D.C., and eventually they're going to take their blood, and they're using them in satanic rituals. I mean, all these lies coming out of the right wing, and now the right wing infecting our police departments, this should really concern us. But I think that something that should concern us even more is, we talk about that one great leap. I've shared with you many times over the years. I mean, going back to 2003, I think was the first time I read on the air from Milton Mayer's book, They Thought They Were Free, where he went to Germany in the 1950s after World War II. He was a reporter for one of the Chicago newspapers. And he went to Germany, and he spent a whole year there. He spent time with and lived with, in part, 10 different quote, good Germans. These were Germans who were not Nazis, not members of the party. They all held a job throughout the war. There was a bricklayer, there was a baker, there was a college professor. There's just a bunch of people, average Germans, and said to them basically, how could you have not known what was going on? And most of them, of course, ultimately came to know what was going on. But the one quote that really stuck with me was where the guy said, and I'm paraphrasing this one from memory, but it's easy enough to, just Google my name and They Thought They Were Free or Milton Mayer, and you'll find, all my excerpts and quotes, and I've written about this many times. But I believe this was the college professor. He said, you keep waiting for the one great shocking event, the one that you think is going to cause people to rise up and say, no, you must stop. He said, but that one great shocking event never comes. He says, if they were gassing the Jews the week after they had put the signs, Christian-owned or German-owned business in the windows, then yes, people would have been out in the streets. But that's not how it works. He said, instead, step A leads to step B, and B wasn't so terrible, and so you don't say anything. And then B leads to C, and C, it's getting worse, but it's still, but you didn't yell at B, so why are you going to yell at C, and then to D and E and F and so on? And he says, and one day you realize that everything has changed, and yet everything looks the same. One of the thresholds that the Germans crossed in the mid-1930s, and I would suggest that this probably was 36, 37, 38, somewhere in there. I'd have to go back and reread William Scheer's Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. But the Night of the Long Knives was when Hitler actually had his political opponents assassinated, including people inside his government. Kristallnacht, which happened, I think, a year or so earlier, was when Nazi thugs went out and shattered the windows of German businesses. But the transition point, this transformation point, was when it became not just okay to imprison people, but actually to kill people because you viewed them as an enemy of the state, without judicial process. You could kill them without charging them with a crime, without holding a trial, without sentencing them to death. You simply have your police kill them. And here in Portland, this guy, Michael Forrest Reinl, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, killed one of the Patriot Prayer guys, one of the right-wingers here. Not a good thing. Nobody just, killing people, terrible. But the police did not attempt to arrest him. Instead, he came walking out of this house that he had been hiding out in after he did an interview with Vice News in which he said that he shot this guy in self-defense. That was going to be his argument in court. He came walking out. He had a cell phone in one hand and a gummy bear or a gummy worm in the other that he was chewing on. And they just opened fire, like 30, 40, 50 bullets, and assassinated him. And Trump was asked about this over the weekend, and he said, and I quote, "I will tell you something, that's the way it has to be. There has to be retribution when you have a crime like this." Really? You assassinate people. Retribution. These were federal police who were shooting, who answered to Trump. Did he say to them, assassinate this guy? And if so, who might be the next person that Trump directs his federal police to assassinate? Have we started down this road? And if he gets reelected, or if he can hold on to power past January 20th, what does that mean for the future of this country?
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
28 minutes past the hour. We'll be shortly. We'll be back with your calls in just a minute. Well, it's Monday. It's a great start to a new week as we are moving, kind of headlong into the election season here. And America is in deep and substantial and real need of a good progressive television network, and we just happen to have one right here. Have you been telling your friends about Free Speech TV? It's pretty important stuff, letting folks know where they can find good progressive programming, because there is good progressive programming, and it's right here. It's right here. But it doesn't continue without your help. And, I know that's, it's the way it is. It's produced as a result. I mean, this is some really brilliant and farsighted thinking back 19, 20 years ago when Free Speech TV was first started, was the idea that there would be journalism that was free of bias, journalism and reporting and opinion that was free of, any corporation or any billionaire saying, here, say this as I pass out some money your way. We've got this $10,000 match from Andrew in San Diego. If we hit our goal at the end of the fund drive, that's a pretty big deal. Mike in San Francisco has covered all our hard costs. So we've got a couple of really good people here helping us out. And now we need you to make this happen. 877-378-8669. You can call now and or anytime during the program. 877-378-8669 with a $20 gift to Free Speech TV. You have your choice of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the sticker that says Fight for Democracy, or a set of 3 stainless steel straws. What a cool thing, It's like, I love it. That's with a $20 gift. With a $50 gift, you can have your choice of one of the 3. The Free Speech TV webcam cover, the tote bag that says change never happens from the top down, and the postcard. With a $75 gift, there's the official Thom Hartmann Program mug or your choice of the Free Speech TV hat, which comes in, what was it Henry Ford used to say? We offer, any color anybody wants as long as it's black. And it was the Model T, and that's the case with this hat. So that's a $75 gift. With a $100 gift, there is a pair of face masks, one for you and one for anybody you'd like to share it with. And it says, what we can grow from crisis. It's, a thought-provoking face mask. A nice idea. And face masks, of course, are increasingly an important part of our lives, just something that, we don't get by without. With a $120 gift, there is the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt. That's, or your choice of one of 3 books. You can either have the t-shirt or a book, and among the books, there are 3 choices. There is The Hidden History of the War on Voting, which is the book that came out about 6 months ago from me. I wrote the book. And it's about the Republican war on voting. I mean, it goes back to the founding of the Republic, but most of the book is about the modern-day Republican war on voting. There is my newest book. It just came out. It literally was just released last week, or the week before last, titled The Hidden History of Monopoly, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream. And it's a pretty timely book. Ralph Nader wrote the foreword to it. And in that foreword, he said words to the effect of, this is one of the best books that's been written on this topic in a while. In fact, here's exactly what he said. This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation. I have read many books on monopolistic practices and have written a few on the subject. None have the potential to reach the moral imagination, and indignation of the American people where they live, work, and raise their families like Hartmann's engrossing volume. None for sure had the potential to reach so many members of Congress who are finally awakening to the long overdue accounting of monopoly's many costs. So Ralph Nader wrote just a wonderful foreword. So your choice of any one of those books, that's with a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, there is your choice. There's 2 Zoom meet and greets that we're going to have, one in October and one in November. The one in October will be on the 14th, and the one in November will be on the 18th. And we'll just all get together on a Zoom call for an hour and talk about whatever's on your mind. You can ask me anything you want, and I'll try to give you as honest and as it is answer. These are not recorded. This is kind of off-the-record conversation. And, I find them fascinating. I've met some really great people, and I think you'll find it interesting, too. That's with a $240 gift. With a $360 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University Fall Box, which includes the I'm a Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the Democracy sticker, the Free Speech TV tote bag, the Democracy postcards, and the book on monopolies that I just read that piece from the foreword by Ralph Nader to you about. And that's with a $360 gift. With a $1,000 gift once this thing settles down, once this pandemic is over. But the larger picture here is that Free Speech TV is here for you. Hi, Thom Hartmann here. In my new book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, I'll be taking you from the birth of America as a revolt against monopoly, remember the Boston Tea Party, to the largely successful efforts of both Presidents Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt and other like-minded leaders to constrain corporations' monopolistic urges, to the massive changes in the rules of business starting during the Reagan Revolution that have brought us into the cancer stage of capitalism. In the foreword by Ralph Nader, he says, "This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation." End quote. It's the 4th in my Hidden History series, available where all fine books are sold. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy starts with you. Tag, you're it. Industry, and you got a health insurance industry that's paying its CEOs millions, in one case in healthcare, billions or billion. And so gridlock. Anyhow, it's over at thomhartmann.com. We'll be back. We are back. It's 35 minutes past the hour. Oh, man. Sometimes it's just like there's so much happening. It's just flying all over the place. For example, I was just talking about Michael Caputo a moment ago. Yesterday, he was complaining that he's under siege by the media. This is the guy who is the Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs for HHS. He's the old conspiracy nut that Donald Trump put in charge of basically publicity for the Department of Health and Human Services. which supervises the Centers for Disease Control, which he has basically been undermining. Well, over the weekend, he retweeted this, that armed camps are being established around Washington, D.C., and this is what they said, quote, "Occupants don't look like vagrants. They look like forward basing for military street operations by Democrats." Really? See, this is how, the protocols of the Elders of Zion and this kind of, and now QAnon, this kind of death cult propaganda sucks people in. You can't, if you reached out to people and said, you should go kill somebody, 99.999% of people would say, what, are you crazy? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to kill somebody. Or if you just reached out to people and said, you should go beat up those people over there. No, why? Come on. Most people are not violent. Most people are not, killers. In fact, it's so rare that we're fascinated by it. It's why, TV dramas usually have a murder as their MacGuffin, as their plot device, because it's so rare that it's fascinating. But, it takes a lot to motivate somebody to kill somebody. You can offer them money. Most people will turn down money. Here's $100,000, just kill so-and-so. No, I won't do it. How about $1 million? Still won't do it. Most people won't kill people. I mean, it's really hard. With one exception. The one thing that will cause people to kill quickly, reflexively, and enthusiastically is fear. It is the one emotion that can spark murder, that consistently will spark violence. So when you say those people over there are coming to get you and your family, which is what white racists have been saying about black people for centuries, which is why black people keep getting killed and lynched by white people, you can motivate people to murder fairly easily. And you go back and you look at some of the pictures of those old lynchings, and there's like 100 white people standing there going, look at this. Because they perceived a threat. Because some demagogue told them, look out. They're coming to get you. Now, obviously, it wasn't always that was the motivating factor in a lynching. For a lot of cases, there's just plain old racial hatred, just pure evil. But I would propose that probably the vast majority of people who just get swept up in this kind of stuff are doing so out of fear. And this is why, back in the early part of the 20th century, the sales pitch by white racists was black people want to take your job, and then they're going to move into your neighborhood, and then they're going to rape your daughter or your wife. I mean, we were sold fear. And here you have the head of communications for Health and Human Services saying that a homeless camp is a forward positioning effort by Democrats who are going to do an armed insurrection, presumably to kick Donald Trump out of the White House on January 20th. Are you getting how dangerous this is? The whole QAnon thing that it's not Jews this time who are going after children. It's immigrants, it's black people, it's liberals. Think about it for a minute. Think how these are shockingly serious times, and I don't think that our media is taking this stuff anywhere near seriously enough. Julia in Chicago. Hey, Julia. Thanks for listening to WCPT. What's up?
Hey, Tom. Thank you for being there. I just wanted to make the comment that you were asking, how did we get here again so soon after World War II with the Nazis and everything else? And how is Germany succumbing to these people retaking Nazi vows and such? And I believe that if William Barr had done his GD job whenever it was discovered that we were under a cyber attack, and the world is under cyber attack, democracy is under cyber attack. They are targeting specific groups. So naturally, the same extremist right propaganda farms that are targeting America are targeting every other functioning democracy on the planet, and that includes Germany. In addition to that, they are targeting our police departments and filling them with hatred. And we don't think this is all just happening, do we? These cops are being trolled. And in the same way that Facebook finally just took down over 800 fake Black Lives Matter groups that were trying to get young black kids to go out and commit acts of violence. These are trolls who are there to kill us from our computers right in our homes. And I just wanted to make that comment, like, can we talk about the real problem? We are at war, and the world is at war. Hungary has fallen, Poland has fallen, Great Britain has fallen, America has fallen. We are going down, people. Democracy is going down. I'm not being hysterical. This is happening right now.
No, democracy's on the ballot this year.
Right in front of us.
Yep.
God
You're absolutely right, Julia.
I pray to God.
Yeah, me too. I do pray for my country frequently, Julia, and I think we all need to, or at least those, if you believe in prayer. If you don't believe in prayer, then send some light or something. But whatever.
Right, the collective soul of humanity. We are going to have to really wake up and really realize what is happening. They're targeting specific groups. They are going after specific groups. Hitler needed the police in Germany to commit his crimes for him, in the same way you just described William Barr sending a hit squad to murder this kid who wasn't even charged with a crime yet. They just went.
Although it's
and
fairly clear that he was a killer.
But
yes, they assassinated him, and then Trump justified it, and he did it more than once, and that I think is a turning point. That is a stepping over the line that I never thought I would see in America. And I am shocked that it's not a leading headline all over the country. Trump endorses extrajudicial assassination. It's mind-boggling. Julia, thank you for the call. Your points are all very well made. Rudy in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hey, Rudy, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I just wanted to mention, according to the 2007 Wikipedia, more than half of all white supremacists in the world lived in Russia. And on top of that, a little over 2 years ago, on July 4th, there were 8 lawmakers that spent the 4th of July in Moscow. And one of them happened to be Ron
Republicans,
Johnson.
As I recall.
You're right. And one of them is Ron Johnson, who now happens to be using a bunch of propaganda against Biden.
Yeah. If I was inclined to go all Joe McCarthy, there's certainly fertile ground for that. I'm not inclined to, and I'm not going to go there, but I would like somebody to start asking those Republican senators, Rand Paul and Ron Johnson and the rest of them, when you went to Russia for the 4th of July, why and what happened. But I don't think it's just Russia either. I think that we've got there's a whole coalition of basically countries that don't want democracy. They don't want it in their country, and they frankly don't want it in our country because we pester people about it. And, although that stopped 4 years ago. Rudy, thank you for the call. Rudy, by the way, with regard to Wikipedia, Wikipedia is not an authoritative source for anything. Double check everything you see. There may be people who have joined groups or clubs or whatever in Russia who constitute half of what we know of. But I'm telling you, white supremacy has been it was the founding religion of this country.
Yeah, and I wouldn't doubt QAnon also comes out of Russia. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. But it appears that QAnon came from the guy who started one of the message boards. They outed the guy a couple of days ago, and there's been basically no coverage of that either. Maybe it just hasn't been nailed down completely yet. It's 45 minutes past the hour. Back with more of your calls in just a minute. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of the news of the day and your calls in just a moment. Stick around. And welcome back. Mark in Perrysburg, Ohio. Hey, Mark, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Thank you. I just wonder if you could help me get my head around the Electoral College a little bit. First, as in, how do you get on it? How do you get appointed to it? And second, as long as they're voting per the population of their state, how is it a risk? How does it get corrupted and do the wrong thing? Thank you.
Sure. Members of the Electoral College are appointed by the political parties that are on the ballot. And typically they're drawn from the ranks of party loyalists. And the Constitution says that electors may vote for whoever they want, although they are directed to vote for a particular candidate by their state based on rules the state comes up with. We have two states, Nebraska and Maine, that have split up their states and said, because they both have more than one elector, part of the state could go for Biden, part of the state could go for Trump, and so we can cast votes for both. The other 48 states all say whoever wins the state gets all the Electoral College votes. There have been a few electors in history who have, and in fact, there was one in the last election, who have said, yeah, I know my state voted for Donald Trump, but I'm not going to do that, and voted for somebody else. I don't recall if it was Hillary Clinton or somebody else. But basically, the problem with the Electoral College is not the electors, Mark. The problem with the Electoral College is that whole winners-take-all thing and the fact that small states have proportionally more electors than large states because every state gets 2 electors based on their 2 senators. And so you've got a Republican bias in the Electoral College, which is why the last time a Republican was elected with a majority of the votes was 1988 when George Herbert Walker Bush was elected. Every president, every Republican since then, George W. Bush in 2000 and Donald Trump in 2016, were elected with a minority of popular votes. George W. Bush lost by 500,000 votes. Donald Trump lost by 3 million votes. And, it's just the way it is. Mark, and what we need is the National Popular Vote I think it's org. You need to check that website out and see how you can help, because that will solve the problem. Mike in Seattle. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Oh, I wanted to talk a little bit about debunking the mask argument that was earlier. Had Donnie got out there and said, we don't understand everything, but you need to wear a mask, did that in January, everybody would have started, well, most everybody, especially if you put a mask on. You would have called up a friend of yours if you didn't know how to make a mask to get somebody to make a mask for you. Store managers would have been calling their friends to get masks made for their employees. My sister was asked by a hospital in Walla Walla, Washington here, to make masks for them, and her and some friends of hers banged out about 800 masks in about 2 weeks. And so that would have been replicated thousands of times across the country. So there were no masks available is the really easiest argument in the world to fix and solve.
Right. I absolutely agree, Mike. And in fact, I have the mask that I wear when Louise and I go for walks was made by a friend of Sean's, our producer, by one of her neighbors who was making masks for friends and neighbors. It's a beautiful mask. I love it. And, it's very colorful and it's cool. And we had this during the Spanish flu. In 1918, there were mask mandates. There was actually a trial here in Portland of a guy who refused to wear a mask, but it was the law. And Trump could have done this. He told Bob Woodward it's an airborne virus. He absolutely could have done it. Mike, you're absolutely right. It's a crime. This is a crime. We'll be back. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the hour. On the Science Revolution this week, Dr. Michael Mann is here on climate change and the West on fire. Plus, there's a new study showing planet Earth may temporarily pass a dangerous 1.5 degrees Celsius warming limit by the middle of the next decade. This is a huge warning to us all. Former EPA official Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali drops by to warn us about creating an apocalyptic, devastated planet. Attorney for Earth Justice Bradley Marshall is here informing us about bomb trains. Earth Justice has just filed a legal challenge to stop them. And in Geeky Science, I'm looking at why the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine study was put on hold. Tune into the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are available. Welcome back. 10 minutes before the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. Simon in Aberdeen, New Jersey. Hey, Simon, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how are you? Quick question. Good. In the event that Trump loses, do you think it would be incumbent on Biden to ask the Trump administration to be allowed to take over the whole coronavirus issue? Because otherwise, he just...
Yeah, no, I get what you're thinking, Simon, but A, it wouldn't be appropriate, and B, Trump would not agree to it. I guarantee you that. What I think Biden should do, if he wins, is the day after the win is defined, is scheduled, he should name his entire cabinet, and his cabinet officers should start holding daily briefings about what they will be doing and what they would do differently. I would love to hear from his Secretary of Education about how they're going to fix our public schools and undo the damage that was done by Betsy DeVos. I would love to hear from his administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency. I realize it's not part of the cabinet, but I would love to hear from that person about how they're going to, and about specifically about the damage that Wheeler, this coal lobbyist, has done as the head of the EPA. I'd love to hear from the head of the Interior, the Secretary of the Interior, about the damage that's going to be done, or the damage that's going to be undone by the oil lobbyist running that agency. I would love to hear from the Secretary of Defense about what he thinks is going on, or she thinks. Susan Rice is a great candidate for that.
I like my idea.
Yeah, I love your idea, Simon, but it ain't going to happen, and that's that. So what I'm offering is a practical alternative. And in some other countries, they do this. It's called a shadow cabinet or a shadow government. Anybody from Great Britain knows exactly what I'm talking about. Deborah in Columbia, Tennessee. Hey, Deborah, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, Trump is outed every other day with a new crime. And I live in Tennessee. A lot of my family and friends and neighbors are Trump supporters. We have discussions, and there is absolutely nothing I can say that sways them. And I want to know, what do you believe that would push Trump supporters over the edge? I don't even think his tax is being released, and it's showing that he's been in bed with Putin. I don't think that would do it, because I don't think they think for themselves anymore. What I think is they would immediately go to Fox or the right-wing news source and see what they were saying and how they should be feeling about this and how they were going to spin it. So that's my rant. Thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you, Deborah, and excellent points all. I told the story earlier of 1988 or 1987. I was living in Germany. Actually, it was 1979, the first time I met this guy. 1979, I met a guy who was a Nazi, an actual believer that Hitler was the right thing. He was exactly what Germany needed. And this was, 30 years after the war was over? 40 years? No, in the late 70s. It would have been a little more than 30 years after the war. He had seen the movies. He had seen the liberation of Dachau and Auschwitz. He knew exactly what had happened, and he was still a Nazi. I mean, there are people who are just like, this is like permeated their souls. And I'm not sure, I think for many of them, there's nothing you can do. Now, that said, the other thing that I learned when I got to know a bunch of elderly Germans, and I got to know a lot of them, dozens and dozens of them, that I knew well. I met far more than that, who were horrified by what happened during the war, was that the cult was broken when the war was over, when the Nazis were defeated. And the same thing was true in Japan. It took defeat to break the cult. And I think that there's a very real possibility that if Donald Trump is soundly defeated, and that's step one, and then step two, all the crimes that were committed during the 4 years of Trump's administration, whether they're actual legal crimes or they're merely crimes against democracy, right? Rolling back environmental protections to speed up global warming, which is fueling these forest fires that we're dealing with here in Oregon. The reason why my throat is so sore right now and it's hard to breathe. and people are dead. You know, if the Biden administration can do a good job of telling Americans and the world, but telling Americans what happened, all the stuff that happened that never got publicized. You know, I mean, a lot of it got talked about on this program, but the average American has no idea how badly this country has basically been raped and pillaged by all the lobbyists that Donald Trump put in charge of virtually every federal agency. The predators that he put in charge. If the Biden administration, if Joe Biden wins and that administration can basically wake America up the way that the United States did and the United Kingdom did, and we actually had Hollywood helped us out in this, right? And anybody in Hollywood, I know, you know, we're on the air in Los Angeles, anybody listening, hey, this is the time to make those kind of movies like we made after World War II, saying, here's what happened in Auschwitz, here's what happened, or here's what happened in whatever. We need to wake America up. And that has the potential to break the hold of the cult. I don't see anything else doing it. Thanks so much for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us. And voting is not enough. I mean, yes, of course, make sure you're registered to vote. Go to iwillvote.com. Do it. But beyond that, get out there, get active, you're it. In my new book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are Omaha Steaks, gourmet you can trust. More information at omahasteaks.com, code TOM. CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. The Clean Phone Pro, phone sanitizer and charger. More info at thenewdealshop.com. Plexiderm Wrinkle Reducer, real science, real results. More info at plexiderm.com, code TOM. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom. And TEEF, TEEF, Smarter Pet Dental Health. For more information, teef.com, code TOM.